I'm Amber. Growing up, I had everything a kid could want, at least on the surface. Our big house in the suburbs was always spotless, thanks to my stay-at-home mom's obsessive cleaning. Dad brought home the big bucks as some hotshot engineering exec. My little brother Jake and I went to the fanciest private school in town. But all that glitz and money couldn't make up for what was missing, my parents' love and attention. From the day Jake was born, it was clear he was the golden child. Mom and Dad fawned over his every move, while I faded into the background. When Jake started playing hockey at age 5, you'd have thought he'd just won Olympic gold from how our parents reacted. "That's our future NHL star," Dad would crow to anyone who'd listen. "Mark my words, Jake's gonna be the next Gretzky." Meanwhile, I'd be sitting there with my straight-A report card, not even warranting a good job, kiddo. But hey, that's life when you're the less-loved child, right? As the years went by, Jake's hockey obsession only grew, fueled by our parents' relentless push for him to succeed. They poured obscene amounts of money into the best gear, private coaches, and elite summer camps. Jake lived and breathed hockey, his entire identity wrapped up in being the next big thing. Don't get me wrong, I loved my brother. Jake was a good kid, even if he could be a brat sometimes. It wasn't his fault our parents put him on such a pedestal. But as I watched him lace up those $500 skates while I was still wearing hand-me-downs, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of resentment. Little did I know, those feelings would only intensify in the years to come. As I headed off to college and started building my own life, Jake's hockey career would continue to dominate our family dynamic. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's back up a bit. Despite feeling like a perpetual afterthought at home, I managed to carve out my own path. I busted my ass in school and landed a spot at a great college, studying interior design. It was my passion, the one thing that was truly mine, not tainted by Jake's shadow. College life was a whirlwind of new experiences and freedom. I threw myself into my studies, determined to make the most of this opportunity to forge my own path. The constant weight of being the less favored child seemed to lift a little with each passing day away from home. I rarely called my parents, and when I did, the conversations were brief and superficial. It wasn't until my junior year that I got a real update on what was happening back home, and it wasn't pretty. "Amber, you won't believe this nonsense," Mom huffed during one of our infrequent calls. "Jake's coach is being completely unreasonable. He's barely letting Jake play." I rolled my eyes, thankful she couldn't see me through the phone. "Oh, what's going on? Your brother is 16 now, and suddenly he's not getting the ice time he deserves. We've invested so much in his training, and now he's just warming the bench. Your father and I have tried talking to the coach, even the team owner, but they won't listen." Time marched on, and before I knew it, I was donning my cap and gown, ready to graduate. As I scanned the crowd for my family, I spotted them easily. They were the ones looking distracted and checking their phones every few minutes. After the ceremony, I made my way over to them, diploma in hand and a proud smile on my face. "Congrats, sweetie," Dad said, giving me a quick hug. "Listen, we can't stay long. Jake's got a big game tonight, and we promised we'd be there early to talk strategy with his coach." I watched them hurry away, my graduation gown suddenly feeling heavy on my shoulders. Same old story, different day. A few months later, I was settled into my new apartment and starting my dream job as an interior designer. I loved every minute of it, the creativity, the challenge, the satisfaction of seeing a space transform under my vision. One evening, as I was sketching out ideas for a client, my phone buzzed with a text from Mom. "Jake's contract wasn't renewed. He's devastated. Your father's looking for an agent to find him a new team. Please call your brother, he won't talk to anyone." I stared at the message, a mix of emotions swirling in my chest. Part of me felt bad for Jake, I knew how much hockey meant to him. But another part, a part one wasn't proud of, felt a twinge of satisfaction. Maybe now my parents would realize that there was more to life than hockey. I didn't call Jake that night. Or the next. I told myself I was too busy with work, but deep down, I knew I was avoiding the drama. It was easier to stay focused on my own life, on building the career I'd always dreamed of. Weeks turned into months. I heard snippets from my parents about Jake's ongoing search for a new team, about the agents and trials and constant disappointments. But it all felt distant, like news from another world. I threw myself into my work, taking on more clients and pushing myself to new creative heights. My designs were getting noticed, and I was building a solid reputation in the field. Just when I'd resigned myself to focusing solely on my career, love came knocking in the form of Eric. We met at a client's housewarming party. He was the charming guy who spilled red wine on the pristine white carpet I'd so carefully selected. As I helped him clean up the mess, we got to talking, and before I knew it, we'd spent the entire evening in our own little bubble. Our relationship blossomed quickly. Within 6 months, we were practically inseparable. By our first anniversary, we decided to move in together. Those 2 years of cohabitation were filled with laughter, love, and the kind of domestic bliss I'd always envied in others, but never thought I'd have for myself. On my 25th birthday, Eric took me out for what I thought was a simple celebratory dinner. As we strolled through the park after our meal, he suddenly dropped to one knee, pulling out a small velvet box. As Eric slipped the gorgeous ring onto my finger, I felt a surge of joy, and then a familiar pang of anxiety. How would my parents react? Would they even care? To my surprise, when I called to share the news, my parents seemed genuinely excited. They insisted on meeting Eric right away, and even offered to host a dinner for us. I was cautiously optimistic as we drove to my childhood home that weekend. The dinner started off well enough. My parents welcomed Eric warmly, and for once, I felt like the center of attention. But as the main course arrived, the conversation took an all too familiar turn. "So, Eric," my dad said, refilling his wine glass, "did Amber tell you about her brother Jake? He's quite the hockey player, you know." I felt my heart sink as my parents launched into a detailed account of Jake's latest attempts to revive his hockey career. Eric, bless him, tried to steer the conversation back to our engagement several times, but it was like trying to stop a runaway train. Despite this, the evening ended on a positive note. My parents insisted on paying for dinner and even gave us their blessing. As we left, Mom hugged me tightly and whispered, "I'm so happy for you, sweetheart. Let's get together soon to start planning, okay?" Over the next few weeks, I found myself in a whirlwind of wedding preparations. To my amazement, my mother became my constant companion in this journey. We met for coffee to discuss color schemes, spent weekends visiting venues, and even had a tearful moment together as I tried on wedding dresses. Even Dad got in on the action. He insisted on paying for half of the wedding expenses, negotiating with Eric's parents like it was a business deal he was determined to win. I caught him one evening, poring over seating charts with the intensity he usually reserved for Jake's hockey strategies. "Dad?" I said, surprised. "You don't have to do that. We can handle the seating arrangements." He looked up at me, a soft smile on his face. "Nonsense, pumpkin. This is your big day. I want everything to be perfect." I felt a warmth spread through my chest. This was all I'd ever wanted, to feel like I mattered to my parents, to be the focus of their attention and love. One sunny afternoon, I sat at my parents' dining room table, surrounded by color swatches and flower catalogs. Mom and Eric's mother, Linda, were engaged in a heated debate about napkin colors. "I'm telling you, cream is the way to go," Mom insisted, waving a swatch like a flag. "It's classic, elegant, and goes with everything." Linda shook her head firmly. "But blush would tie in so beautifully with the bridesmaids' dresses." "Amber, what do you think?" I couldn't help but smile. "Honestly, I think either would look lovely." Both women looked at me like I'd grown a second head. "Amber, dear," Mom said, patting my hand, "this is your special day. Every detail matters." I bit back a laugh. Who would have thought I'd ever see my mother so invested in something related to me? It was almost comical. The great napkin debate was followed by an equally passionate discussion about the music playlist. Dad and Eric's father, Tom, Nearly came to blows over whether we should have a live band or a DJ. I exchanged an amused glance with Eric. Maybe we could have both? I suggested. A band for the ceremony and dinner, and a DJ for the dance party after? Both men looked at me with newfound respect. Now that's using your noggin, Dad said proudly. See, Tom? My girls got it all figured out. But even as I basked in this newfound parental attention, reality had a way of creeping in. Just as we were finalizing the venue details, Mom's phone buzzed. Her face lit up as she read the message. Oh, this is wonderful news. Jake's got a tryout with a team in Calgary next week. And just like that, the spell was broken. That's great, I said, trying to keep the disappointment out of my voice. We'll need to reschedule our cake tasting, Mom said, already typing furiously on her phone. Your father and I need to fly out with Jake. This could be his big break. This became a recurring theme over the next few weeks. For every wedding plan we managed to nail down, there was a Jake-related interruption. A venue walkthrough was cancelled because of Jake's crucial training session. A meeting with the florist was cut short when my parents had to rush Jake to a last-minute interview with a scout. One evening, as Eric and I were going over the guest list, I broke down. I don't get it, I sobbed into Eric's shoulder. They're spending thousands on flights and hotels for Jake's hockey pipe dream, but they can't stick around for one lousy florist appointment? Eric held me close, stroking my hair. I know it's hard, babe. But hey, at least they're helping with the wedding costs, right? That's something. I nodded, wiping my eyes. He was right, of course. The old Amber would have been furious, ready to call off the whole thing and elope. But I was trying to be more understanding, more mature. The days flew by in a flurry of final wedding preparations. Despite the occasional Jake-related hiccup, I was riding high on a wave of excitement and anticipation. Everything was falling into place, the venue was perfect, the flowers were ordered, and my dress fit like a dream. I could almost taste the happiness that awaited me on my big day. Just a week before the wedding, I was going over last-minute details with our planner when my phone buzzed. Mom's name flashed on the screen. Hi, Mom. I was just about to call you about the rehearsal dinner tomorrow. Amber, honey, Mom cut in, her voice tense. About that, we need to talk. Your father has an urgent business trip, and we're going to have to reschedule the rehearsal. And, well, we might need to postpone the wedding date too. I felt like I'd been doused with ice water. I'm sorry, what? Mom, please tell me you're joking. I wish I was, dear. But your father's job is very important, you know that. And I need to go with him for support. We'll let you know when we're back and we can set a new date then. My mind was reeling. This couldn't be happening. Not now, not when we were so close. Mom, the wedding is in a week. We can't just postpone it. What about all the guests? The vendors? Everything's paid for. I know it's inconvenient, Amber, but sometimes these things happen. You'll understand when you're older. I ended the call in a daze, my carefully constructed world crumbling around me. How could they do this? After all the progress we'd made, all the moments I thought we'd shared, was I still so unimportant to them? Eric found me an hour later, curled up on our bed, tears streaming down my face. I poured out the whole story, my words punctuated by sobs. We spent the next few hours brainstorming solutions. Could we postpone? What would it cost? Could we do it without them? Nothing felt right. As night fell, I found myself mindlessly scrolling through social media, seeking any distraction from the chaos in my head. That's when I saw it, a post from Jake that made my blood run cold. Eastern Europe, here I come. Can't wait to show these European clubs what real hockey looks like. Thanks Mom and Dad for always having my back. This is gonna be my big break, I can feel it. The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. There was no business trip. My parents were flying halfway across the world for yet another of Jake's hockey pipe dreams, and they were willing to sacrifice my wedding to do it. With trembling fingers, I hit the call button next to Jake's name. Each ring felt like an eternity as I paced our living room, my mind a whirlwind of emotions. "Hey, sis," Jake's cheery voice came through the speaker. "What's up?" I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady. "Jake, I just saw your post about going to Eastern Europe. What's going on?" "Oh man, it's incredible," he gushed, his excitement palpable even through the phone. "Mom and Dad are the best, you know? They're paying for everything, the flight, my agent, a swanky hotel. They're even coming with me for support. Can you believe it?" My heart sank. So it was true. "When exactly are you going?" I asked, dreading the answer. "We leave next Friday. The tryouts start on Sunday, and..." "Next Friday?" I cut him off, my voice rising. "Jake, that's my wedding day." There was a pause, then Jake chuckled. "Oh yeah, I forgot about that. Well, you can always reschedule, right? This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for me." I felt like I'd been slapped. "Reschedule? Jake, it's my wedding. How can you even suggest that?" "Look, Amber," he said, his tone suddenly dismissive, "my career is more important than any wedding. You can get married any day, but this might be my last chance to make it big in hockey." Something snapped inside me. Years of pent-up frustration and hurt came pouring out. "Are you kidding me? Do you have any idea how many times I've been pushed aside for your hockey dreams? How many times Mom and Dad have chosen you over me? And now you want me to give up my wedding day?" "Hey, it's not my fault Mom and Dad see my potential," Jake shot back. "Don't hate the player, hate the game, sis." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Jake, you're 22 years old. Don't you think it's time you handled your own career without Mom and Dad holding your hand?" He laughed, the sound grating on my already frayed nerves. "Why would I do that when they're so willing to help? I'd be stupid to turn down their support. Can't you see how selfish you're being?" I pleaded, a last desperate attempt to reach him. "Just this once, can't you step back and let this be about me?" "Sorry, sis," Jake replied, not sounding sorry at all. "I'm not concerned about your future. I'm not sacrificing my career for your little party." The line went dead, leaving me standing in shocked silence. I couldn't believe it. My own brother, so dismissive of one of the most significant moments of my life. And my parents, willing to lie to me, to abandon me on my wedding day for yet another of Jake's hockey pipe dreams. Fury bubbled up inside me, hot and overwhelming. Why should I have to put my life on pause for Jake? Why couldn't my parents be honest with me? The unfairness of it all was suffocating. I sank onto the couch, my mind reeling. All those years of trying to understand, of making excuses for their behavior, of hoping things would change, it all felt so pointless now. The drive to my parents' house was tense, the air thick with unspoken words. Eric squeezed my hand reassuringly as we pulled into the driveway. "You've got this," he whispered, and I nodded, drawing strength from his support. Mom answered the door, her smile faltering as she took in our serious expressions. "Amber, Eric, what a surprise. Come in, come in." We found Dad in the living room, engrossed in what looked suspiciously like flight bookings on his laptop. He quickly closed it as we entered. "Mom, Dad," I began, my voice steadier than I felt, "we need to talk about the wedding. And about Jake's trip to Europe." Their faces fell, guilt flashing across their features before they composed themselves. "What about Jake?" Dad asked, feigning innocence. "I told you, I have an important business trip." "Stop," I cut him off, my patience wearing thin. "I know the truth. Jake told me everything." A heavy silence fell over the room. Mom and Dad exchanged glances, their charade crumbling. "All right," Mom sighed. "Yes, we're going with Jake to Europe for his hockey tryouts. But Amber, you have to understand." "Understand what?" I interrupted, years of pent-up frustration bubbling to the surface. "That once again, you're putting Jake first? That my wedding day means nothing compared to his hockey career? Dad's face hardened. Now listen here, young lady. You're being selfish. This is Jake's future we're talking about. He's talented, and this could be his big break. As his family, we need to support him. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Selfish? Me? What about all the times you've chosen Jake over me? My graduations, my achievements, and now my wedding? When has it ever been about me? Amber, Mom pleaded, you're an adult now. You have your career, your life with Eric. Jake still needs our help too. To what? I shot back. To chase a dream that's clearly not happening? He's 22, for God's sake. When will you let him stand on his own 2 feet? The room fell silent again, my words hanging in the air. Then, I took a deep breath and made my decision. I'm not canceling or postponing the wedding. If you choose not to be there, that's on you. I'm done putting my life on hold for Jake's ambitions. My parents stared at me, shock evident on their faces. Then Dad's expression darkened. Now you listen here, he growled, jabbing a finger in my direction. We're paying for half of this wedding. You'll do as we say, or we'll cancel every payment we've made. You can't afford this wedding without us. I felt Eric tense beside me, ready to jump to my defense, but I squeezed his hand, silently asking him to let me handle this. Actually, Dad, I said, my voice calm despite the storm of emotions inside me, we can. Eric and I are prepared to take out a loan to cover your half. We'll pay you back in full for every cent you've spent. The next week was a whirlwind. We went ahead with the wedding rehearsal, the bachelor and bachelorette parties, all the final preparations. Through it all, a small part of me kept hoping that my parents would come to their senses, that they'd show up and apologize. They didn't. The morning of my wedding day dawned bright and clear, as if the universe itself was celebrating with us. The ceremony was everything I'd ever dreamed of and more. As I walked down the aisle, not on my father's arm but on my own, a symbol of the strength I'd found within myself, I saw Eric waiting for me, his face alight with love and joy. In that moment, I knew I'd made the right choice. We exchanged vows, our voices steady and sure, promising to love and support each other through whatever life might throw our way. As we sealed our union with a kiss, the cheers and applause from our friends and chosen family washed over us like a wave of pure love. The reception was a blur of laughter, dancing, and celebration. We ate, drank, and made merry, surrounded by people who truly cared about us. The photo shoot captured moments of pure, unadulterated happiness, Eric and I gazing into each other's eyes, our friends lifting us onto their shoulders, all of us laughing as we attempted a group dance number. It wasn't until a week after we returned from our honeymoon that reality came knocking. My phone lit up with my mother's number. Amber, sweetie, her voice came through, sounding tired and strained. We're back from Europe. Can we meet? We need to talk. I took a deep breath, steeling myself. No, Mom. I don't think that's a good idea. But your brother didn't make the team. He's devastated, Amber. He needs his big sister right now. I closed my eyes, fighting back the familiar urge to cave in, to be the understanding one once again. I'm sorry to hear that, Mom. But that's not my problem anymore. Please don't call me again. Focus on Jake, he clearly needs you more than I do. I ended the call and blocked their numbers, feeling a mixture of sadness and relief wash over me. The next day, I transferred the full amount my parents had contributed to the wedding into their account. It was a significant sum, and Eric and I would be paying off the loan for a while, but it felt worth it for the freedom it bought us. A few weeks later, my friend Liv called to tell me about a social media post my parents had made. They painted me as the villain, calling me selfish for getting married without them, lamenting how heartbroken my father was at not walking me down the aisle. The comments were full of sympathetic responses from people who didn't know the whole story. But then, my cousins and aunts and uncles, the ones who had been there, who had seen the years of neglect and favoritism, they stepped in. They shared the truth, calling out my parents for their behavior, for consistently putting Jake's interests above mine. I was touched by their support, but I didn't engage. That chapter of my life was closed. Months passed, and life settled into a beautiful new rhythm. Eric and I threw ourselves into our careers, traveled, and made plans for our future. When we found out we were expecting our first child, our joy was untainted by family drama. Occasionally, news of Jake and my parents would reach me through the family grapevine. Jake had started drinking heavily after his hockey dreams fell through. My parents were frantically trying to fix him, dragging him from one therapist to another. Part of me felt sorry for them, for the mess they'd created with their favoritism and enabling. But a larger part of me knew it wasn't my burden to bear. As I sat in the nursery Eric and I had lovingly prepared for our baby, my hand resting on my growing belly, I realized something profound. The family I'd always longed for, the love and support I'd craved, I was creating it right here, right now. I was 10 years old when my world changed forever. I still remember that night clearly, the sound of breaking glass, my mom crying, and my 5-year-old sister Sarah clutching my arm as we huddled in our shared bedroom. It was the night Mom finally had enough of Dad's drinking and kicked him out. The changes came fast. Dad disappeared completely, no visits, no child support, nothing. Mom had to work longer hours at her office job, leaving me to pick up the slack at home. At 10, I learned to use the microwave, figured out how to work the washing machine, and became responsible for getting Sarah ready for school. "Lucy, you're such a good big sister," Mom would say, kissing my forehead when she came home late, exhausted from work. "I don't know what I'd do without you." But it wasn't easy. While other kids my age were playing after school, I was walking Sarah home, helping her with homework, and trying to keep our small apartment somewhat clean. I learned to make simple meals, sandwiches, pasta, anything that didn't require using the stove. Sarah would complain about having the same food all the time, but I did my best. Mom and I sacrificed everything for Sarah. When she needed new shoes, I wore my old ones for another season. When she wanted to join the dance class, Mom picked up extra shifts to pay for it. We wanted her to have a normal childhood, even if it meant we couldn't have one ourselves. The years passed this way, with me juggling school and home responsibilities while Mom worked herself to exhaustion. Then, when I was 13, something amazing happened. Mom got promoted to senior manager at her company. Suddenly, our financial struggles began to ease. "Girls, I have something to tell you," Mom announced one evening, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "We're going to be able to move to a house. A real house with a yard." Sarah squealed with delight, but I felt a mix of emotions. Yes, I was happy we'd have more space, and Mom wouldn't have to work quite so many hours. But I'd made friends in our neighborhood, and my school was here. When Mom said I could stay at my current school, I felt relieved. Sarah, however, was enrolled in an expensive private school across town. Several years have passed since then. Mom earned well, and I was able to continue my studies after school. The day I left for college was bittersweet. Mom helped me pack my few belongings into her car for the 3-hour drive to State University, while Sarah lounged on the couch, barely looking up from her phone to say goodbye. "Call me when you get settled," Mom said, hugging me tight outside my dormitory. Her eyes were wet, but she was smiling. "I'm so proud of you, Lucy." I watched her drive away, knowing the sacrifices she'd made to get me here. No dating, no social life, just endless work and saving to give us both a chance at a good education. The tuition money she'd saved for me represented years of overtime and careful budgeting. I was determined not to waste a penny of it. My dorm room was tiny, with creaky furniture and a roommate who barely spoke English, but it felt like freedom. Within a week, I'd found a job at the campus coffee shop, working early morning shifts, before classes. The manager liked that I already knew how to balance responsibilities. Between classes, work, and studying, I barely had time to breathe, but I loved it. My professors noticed my dedication, and by the end of my first semester, I was on the dean's list. That's when the calls from Sarah started becoming more frequent. "Lucy, you'll never believe how unfair Mom is being," she whined through the phone one evening as I was finishing my economics homework. Everyone at school is going to Coachella, but she says it's too expensive. $3,000 isn't even that much. I nearly choked on my ramen noodles. 3,000? Sarah, that's crazy. The calls followed a pattern. One week it was concert tickets, the next it was a designer bag everyone at her school had. When Mom refused, Sarah would call me, hoping I'd either send money or convince Mom to give in. My breakthrough came during junior year. My business strategy professor recommended me for an internship at Preston and Associates, one of the top firms in the city. The work was challenging, but I threw myself into every task, staying late and coming in early. "We don't usually do this," Mr. Preston told me one afternoon, "but we'd like to offer you a position here after graduation. Your work ethic is exceptional." I was walking back to my dorm, still floating from the news, when my phone buzzed. Sarah again. "Mom's being impossible," she started, without even saying hello. "She won't give me money for a spring break trip to Cancun. Everyone's going except me. Can you send me like $800? I'll pay you back someday." "Sarah, why don't you get a part-time job?" I suggested, not for the first time. "The mall's always hiring. You could earn your own money for things like this." "Ugh, as if. You so boring and responsible all the time. No wonder you don't have any friends at college. All you do is work and study." She hung up before I could respond. I stood outside my dorm building, staring at my phone and wondering how two sisters could turn out so differently. While I was building my future one coffee order and study session at a time, Sarah was still waiting for everything to be handed to her on a silver platter. Graduation day felt surreal. As I walked across the stage to receive my diploma, I spotted Mom in the audience, beaming with pride. Sarah wasn't there, she had a really important social event that day. 2 weeks later, I started at Preston and Associates. When my first real paycheck hit my account, I knew exactly what I wanted to do with it. I spent hours picking out the perfect gifts, an elegant silk scarf and matching bag for Mom, and a high-end makeup set from Sarah's favorite brand for my sister. "Surprise!" I called out, walking into our family home one Friday evening. Mom was in the kitchen, cooking dinner as always. "Lucy," Mom rushed to hug me. When I handed her the wrapped package, her eyes welled up. "Oh, honey, this is too much," she whispered, running her fingers over the silk. "Nothing's too much for you, Mom." Sarah clomped down the stairs then, already frowning. "I thought I heard your voice. What are you doing here?" "I brought you something." I handed her the beautifully wrapped makeup set. She opened it carelessly, ripping the paper. "Oh, I actually wanted the other collection from this brand." "You should have just given me the money, I would have bought what I actually needed." "Sarah," Mom scolded, but I just shrugged. Some things never changed. Life moved quickly after that. I rented a small but clean apartment closer to work, determined to save enough for a down payment on my own place someday. At Preston and Associates, I threw myself into every project, staying late and coming in early. Within 6 months, I had my first promotion. Then came the call from Mom. "I don't know what to do anymore," she sighed. "Sarah's dropped out of college. Says it's not for her. Do you know how much money I've already paid for this semester? She says she's going to be an influencer. Keeps asking for money for camera equipment and designer clothes for her videos. Lucy, I'm still working 60-hour weeks to pay for all this." I tried talking to Sarah, driving to her favorite coffee shop where she was working on content. "Oh my God, spare me the responsible big sister act." She rolled her eyes. "Not everyone wants your boring corporate life. I'm building my brand. Mom gets it, even if you don't." But Mom didn't get it. She kept working overtime to support Sarah's influencer career, which seemed to consist mainly of shopping hauls and coffee shop photos. Then I met James. It was at my friend Maria's housewarming party. He was her colleague from the architecture firm down the street. "Want to grab coffee sometime?" he asked as the party was winding down. One coffee date turned into dinner, dinner turned into weekend trips, and before I knew it, a year had passed. When he proposed, it felt right. We moved in together in my rented apartment, planning to save for a house. By then, Sarah had her own place too, funded by Mom, of course. She'd gotten a job at an upscale boutique, though it seemed more about the employee discount than actual work. The call came on a Tuesday morning. I was in the middle of a presentation when I saw Mom's number flash on my phone. Something in my gut told me to step out and take it. "Lucy?" Mom's voice was small, unlike I'd ever heard it before. "I need you to come to the hospital. The doctors, they found something." The next few hours passed in a blur. I drove the 3 hours to my hometown, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. "Cancer, stage 3. Words like aggressive treatment and survival rates bounced off the sterile hospital walls while I held Mom's trembling hand. All I could think about was how small she looked in that huge hospital bed, this woman who had always been our family's foundation. Mom had to quit her job despite her protests that she could still work. Thankfully, her years of careful saving meant she had enough put aside for treatment. She'd always been preparing for some unnamed future emergency. I just never imagined it would be this. The first rounds of chemotherapy were brutal. I'd drive to Mom's house after work, help her to the bathroom, make dinner, and try not to let her see me cry as more of her hair fell out. The 3-hour drive back home in the dark was exhausting, but I couldn't bear the thought of her being alone. "Sarah should be here to see this," Mom whispered one evening as I was preparing her favorite soup. "She should know." I called Sarah that evening on my drive home. "Mom's asking for you." "I'm really busy right now, Lucy. I've got this collaboration coming up." "She has cancer, Sarah. She needs both her daughters." A long pause. I can't deal with hospitals and sick people. It's too depressing, you know?" I pulled over to the side of the highway, my hands trembling with anger. "I'll pay you. Monthly. Whatever you're making at the boutique, I'll match it if you'll help take care of Mom when I can't be here." Sarah's laugh was cold. "Are you serious? I'm not going to waste my time playing nurse to a sick person. That's what actual nurses are for." The next day, I arranged for a professional nurse, Angela, despite Mom's protests that it was too expensive. "You need proper care when I'm at work or driving back home," I insisted. Angela turned out to be a blessing, capable, kind, and professional in all the ways Sarah refused to be. But then a new problem emerged. "James. You're never home anymore," he complained one night when I finally made it back to our apartment around midnight. "I feel like I'm living alone. My mother has cancer, James. She needs me. And what about what I need?" He ran his hands through his hair in frustration. "When was the last time we had dinner together? Or watched a movie? Or did anything normal couples do? This isn't forever," I tried to explain, exhausted from the long drive. "She's sick. She needs help. That's what the nurse is for. You don't have to drive there every single day. You're going to kill yourself with these long drives. You look exhausted all the time." But I couldn't stop. Sarah wouldn't do it. James didn't understand. And Mom had spent 25 years taking care of us. How could I do any less for her now? As the weeks of Mom's treatment wore on, I started noticing uncomfortable similarities between James and Sarah. They both had the same way of shirking responsibility, the same talent for making excuses, the same aversion to anything that wasn't fun or easy. I first noticed it during one of our weekend visits to Mom's house. While I was upstairs helping Mom with her medication and making sure she ate something, I could hear laughter floating up from below. James and Sarah were sitting in the living room, sharing jokes and stories like old friends. "Honey," Mom whispered, "go tell them to keep it down." I went downstairs to find them sharing Sarah's phone screen, both grinning at something. "Could you two please keep it down?" I asked, trying to keep my voice level. "Mom's trying to rest." "And James, could you come help me with her lunch?" They looked up at me like teenagers caught passing notes in class. Always so serious, Sarah rolled her eyes. God, you're such a buzzkill, James added. Totally boring, they said almost simultaneously, then burst into fresh laughter at their synchronicity. I stood there, watching my husband and sister share a private joke at my expense, and felt something shift inside me. Something important was happening here, but I was too exhausted to figure out what it was. The months crawled by in a haze of hospital visits, late-night drives, and increasingly frequent moments of finding James and Sarah in deep conversation. But then, finally, a miracle, Mom's latest test showed remission. The cancer was retreating. You need a break, my boss said after I burst into tears of relief at my desk. Take some time off. You've more than earned it. That night, I browsed through travel websites, looking at beach resorts and tropical paradises. For the first time in months, I let myself dream about something other than hospital corridors and medication schedules. The Maldives? James said, suddenly interested as he peered over my shoulder. It was the most engaged he'd been with me in months. That looks amazing. I was thinking about a couple of weeks there, I said cautiously. Now that Mom's better. Yes, his enthusiasm surprised me. Let's do it, I'll take time off too. God knows we need this. For the next few days, we were almost like newlyweds again, excitedly planning our trip. We booked an overwater bungalow, researched restaurants, planned snorkeling excursions. James even surprised me by arranging a couple's massage package. For the first time in months, I felt hopeful. Maybe this vacation would help us find our way back to each other. Maybe all we needed was some time away from everything, the hospitals, the stress, the constant worry. 1 week before our scheduled departure to the Maldives, Mom collapsed. I was at work when Angela called. Lucy, you need to come quickly. Your mother's not well. The familiar drive to Mom's house had never felt longer. At the hospital, the doctors spoke in grave tones about heart complications from the chemotherapy. Mom looked so fragile in the hospital bed, nothing like the woman who'd raised us. Sarah, I said when she finally answered my call, I need you to stay with Mom. I can't be here all the time, and she needs someone. Are you kidding me? Sarah cut me off. I told you, I'm not playing nurse. I have plans. I hung up and called James next. His reaction was worse. No, he said flatly when I told him I couldn't go on the trip. No way. You are not canceling this vacation. My mother is in the hospital. There's always something with your mother. The tickets are non-refundable, Lucy. I'm going, with or without you. Are you serious right now? My mother could be dying. Yeah? Well, our marriage is dying too, but you don't seem to care about that. I packed a bag and moved to Mom's house that night. James didn't try to stop me. 2 days later, my phone buzzed with an Instagram notification. James had posted a photo of his overwater bungalow. Paradise found, read the caption. I tried to push down my anger and focus on Mom. But on the third morning, as I was helping her take a sip of water, she squeezed my hand weakly. Lucy, she whispered. I'm sorry. Those were her last words. Her heart gave out an hour later. The world stopped making sense. I moved through the next few hours in a fog, holding her cold hand until the doctors gently pulled me away. My calls to James went straight to voicemail. Sarah's phone just rang and rang. I sat alone in Mom's quiet house, surrounded by sympathy casseroles from neighbors, trying to plan a funeral for the woman who'd given everything for us. The funeral home needed decisions. The obituary needed writing. But my husband was gone, and my sister was nowhere to be found. In desperation, I called Jenny, Sarah's best friend since high school. Jenny, have you heard from Sarah? I can't reach her, and Mom. Mom died this morning. The silence on the other end stretched too long. Lucy, her voice was small, guilty. I think you should know something. Sarah, she's in the Maldives. She's with James. They left together. I'm so sorry, Lucy. I should have told you sooner, but Sarah made me promise. I hung up before she could finish. With shaking hands, I opened Sarah's Instagram profile. There it was, a photo of a tropical sunset, posted an hour ago. The same view James had posted yesterday. I sat in Mom's favorite chair, in the house where she'd raised us, where she'd sacrificed everything to give us a good life, and tried to comprehend how my sister and my husband could do this. Not just the affair, that was bad enough, but to abandon us now, when Mom was dying? To be sipping cocktails in paradise while I planned our mother's funeral alone? The depth of their betrayal was almost as devastating as losing Mom. Almost. Mom's funeral was small and quiet. The chapel was filled with her coworkers, old friends, and neighbors, but the 2 empty seats in the front row spoke volumes. I delivered the eulogy alone, my voice somehow staying steady as I talked about Mom's strength, her sacrifice, her unconditional love. A week later, I was sitting in Mom's kitchen, surrounded by sympathy cards I couldn't bring myself to open, when I heard the front door unlock. Sarah's laugh floated in first, that familiar, carefree sound that now felt like a knife in my chest. Then James's deeper chuckle joined in. They strolled into the kitchen like they were returning from a casual weekend away, both golden-tanned and relaxed. Sarah had a new designer bag. James's wedding ring was gone. "Oh good, you're here," Sarah said, as if we were meeting for coffee. "We need to talk." James wrapped his arm around Sarah's waist, and I watched my sister lean into my husband's embrace. The casual intimacy of it made my stomach turn. "I'm filing for divorce," James announced, pulling a manila envelope from his bag. "Sarah and I are getting married." I stared at them, these 2 sun-kissed strangers wearing the faces of people I'd once loved. Without a word, I took the papers and signed them, using the pen Mom had always kept by the phone for writing grocery lists. "Great," Sarah clapped her hands. "Now, you need to get out of the house. It's mine now." I looked up from the divorce papers. "What?" "Mom always loved me best," Sarah said, examining her manicure. "Obviously she left everything to me. I mean, I was her baby. You were just there. God, she probably felt obligated to keep you around." I packed a small bag that night, taking only what I knew was undeniably mine. I couldn't stay in that house with them, watching them play house in the space where Mom had just died. Where she'd fought so hard to live. A week later, my phone rang. It was Mom's notary, Mr. Patterson, inviting me to the official reading of the will. When I arrived at his office, Sarah and James were already there, holding hands and whispering to each other like teenagers. Sarah shot me a triumphant smile. Mr. Patterson cleared his throat and began to read. "I, Elizabeth Marie Chen, being of sound mind, declare this to be my last will and testament." I watched Sarah's smile grow wider with each preliminary paragraph. Then Mr. Patterson reached the distributions. "To my eldest daughter, Lucy Chen, I leave my house at 1542 Maple Street, and all my savings accounts totaling $400,000. Sarah's smile vanished. "What?" "To my youngest daughter, Sarah Chen, I leave $50,000, with the hope that she will use it wisely." I feel compelled to add that I recently overheard Sarah discussing her anticipation of my death and her plans for all that cash. While this was painful to hear, it only confirmed what I already knew about both my daughters' characters. Sarah's face had turned an ugly shade of red. James was suddenly very interested in his shoes. Additionally, Mr. Patterson continued, "I have left a private letter for Lucy." He handed me an envelope. Inside was a single page in Mom's familiar handwriting. "My dearest Lucy, you have always been the strongest of us, even when you thought you weren't. You learned early what Sarah never did, that love means showing up, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. I'm leaving you everything because I know you'll use it wisely. As for Sarah, I'm leaving her enough to help her if she truly needs it, but not enough to hurt her. If she ever truly changes, truly grows up, you can help her if you choose to. But only if she earns it. All my love, Mom." I had barely finished reading Mom's letter when Sarah's scream echoed off the notary's office walls. "This is ridiculous. I'll sue you, Lucy. I'll take half of everything." Mr. Patterson adjusted his glasses calmly. "Miss Chen, the will is ironclad. Your mother had it properly witnessed and notarized 3 months ago, shortly after she overheard your conversation about her death. You don't have any grounds for contest." James stood up then, straightening his tie like he was preparing for a business negotiation. "Actually, I believe I'm entitled to half of Lucy's inheritance. We were still married when Elizabeth drew up the will, and—" "Mr. Turner," Mr. Patterson interrupted, "I've been practicing law in this state for 30 years. Inheritance is not considered marital property here, even if received during marriage. You have no claim to any of it." I watched their faces as it sank in. They'd get nothing but Sarah's $50,000. No house, no savings, no easy path to the luxury lifestyle they'd been dreaming of while Mom was dying. They left, but it wasn't the end. For weeks, James kept trying to contact me. Flowers delivered to my job. Lengthy emails about how he'd found clarity during our separation. Tearful voicemails about second chances. Sarah took a different approach. She alternated between threats of legal action and tearful apologies, depending on the day. "I'm your sister," she'd plead in her messages. "Family forgives." But Mom had taught me that family means showing up when things are hard. Neither of them had shown up when it mattered most. Through mutual friends, I heard they'd moved in together, playing house with Sarah's $50,000. It lasted exactly 2 months before they imploded. Apparently, Sarah's spending habits and James's controlling nature weren't as compatible as they'd thought. They had a screaming match in a restaurant that ended with Sarah throwing her wine in James's face and him calling her a spoiled brat. I blocked them both on every platform, changed my phone number, and asked my friends not to give me updates anymore. Some stories don't need to be followed to their end. Now, 6 months later, I'm sitting in my kitchen, drinking coffee from her favorite mug. The house still holds her presence in every corner, but it's not painful anymore. I've repainted some rooms, rearranged furniture, made it mine while keeping the essence of her. Sometimes I wonder if Sarah will ever truly change, ever become someone Mom hoped she could be. The letter said I could help her if she did. But that's not my responsibility anymore. For the first time in my life, I'm focusing on my own healing, my own growth, my own future. I never really knew my mom. She passed away when I was just 3, leaving behind only a collection of photographs and the faintest memories that sometimes feel more like dreams. My dad, James Parker, owned a small but successful business that often took him away on trips. He was a good man, just, sometimes too trusting, I guess. I remember the day Dad introduced me to Sarah. I was 4, and he told me she was going to be my new mom. She had long blonde hair and smiled a lot, at least when Dad was around. They got married pretty quickly, and within a year, I had a baby sister named Emma. "Rose, come meet your little sister," Dad had said, beaming with pride. I remember touching Emma's tiny fingers and thinking how cool it would be to have a sister to play with. If only I'd known then how things would turn out. My grandmother, Dad's mom, visited us often in those early days. She was this warm, energetic woman who always brought me cookies and told the best stories. But I started noticing the tension between her and Sarah pretty early on. "James, dear," Grandma would say, looking around our increasingly messy house, "perhaps Sarah could use some help with the housework? The dishes have been piling up." Sarah would grip her coffee mug tighter, that fake smile plastered on her face. "Oh, Mother, you know how busy I am with the baby. These things take time." Later, I'd overhear Sarah on the phone with her friends, that old witch. Can you believe her? Coming into my house and criticizing my housekeeping? She's absolutely crazy. The tension kept building until one day, when I was about 6, it all exploded. Grandma had come over unexpectedly and found Sarah lounging on the couch while I was trying to reach the sink to wash dishes. "This is unacceptable," Grandma had shouted. She's just a child, Sarah. You can't make her do everything while you sit around all day. Sarah burst into tears, fake ones, I now know, and ran to Dad's office. I can't take it anymore, James. Your mother, she's trying to destroy our family. She's always criticizing me, always making me feel worthless. You have to choose, James, your mother or your family. That was the last time I saw my grandmother for many years. Dad chose Sarah, just like she knew he would. He called Grandma and told her not to come around anymore. I remember seeing her walk down our driveway for the last time, her shoulders slumped in defeat. Good riddance to that crazy old woman, Sarah had muttered under her breath, but loud enough for me to hear. Then she turned to me with those cold eyes I'd come to know so well. From now on, Rose, my mother is your only grandmother. Understand? I nodded, fighting back tears. That was the day I learned an important lesson. In our house, Sarah's word was law, and anyone who challenged her would disappear from our lives. I was 7 years old, and my real nightmare was just beginning. Everything changed right after my 8th birthday. Sarah called me into the living room one morning while Dad was away on another business trip. Emma was playing with her toys, scattering them everywhere as usual. Rose, you're a big girl now, Sarah said, her voice sickly sweet. It's time you started helping around the house. You'll be responsible for keeping things tidy and clean. I didn't think much of it at first. I'd always been neat with my own things anyway, and I thought helping meant normal kid stuff like making my bed or putting away my toys. But Sarah had other plans. Start with picking up Emma's mess, she ordered, pointing at the chaos of toys, crayons, and crushed crackers covering the floor. And make sure you vacuum after. That became my new normal. Every day, I'd clean up after Emma, who seemed to take special delight in making messes. She'd dump out entire boxes of cereal, just to find the toy at the bottom, spill juice on purpose, and leave sticky handprints on every surface she could reach. Can my friend Katie come over to play? I asked one day, hopeful for some normal kid time. Sarah's face hardened. Absolutely not. Your little friends will just make more mess for you to clean up. Besides, you have chores to do. I watched through the window as Emma's friends came over regularly, turning the house upside down while I trailed behind them with a trash bag and cleaning supplies. One day, when I was cleaning up another of Emma's disasters, I tried to reason with her. She was 3 by then, old enough to understand basic things, I thought. Emma, please try to pick up your toys when you're done playing, I said gently. It would really help. Rose, Sarah's sharp voice, cut through the air. She stormed into the room, face red with anger. How dare you tell your sister what to do? She's growing up to be smart and successful, she doesn't need to waste her time cleaning. That's your job. By the time I turned 9, I was basically running the household whenever Dad was away. Sarah would leave me alone for hours while she took Emma to play centers, parks, or her friends' houses. I was terrified of using the stove, I could barely reach the controls, but I was more scared of Sarah's anger if dinner wasn't ready. I'd drag a chair to the counter, trying to figure out how to make simple things like pasta or heat up soup, constantly afraid I'd burn myself or start a fire. Dad's homecomings were like watching a magic show. Sarah would transform into a completely different person the moment his key turned in the lock. The house would already be spotless, she'd spend the morning cleaning it herself for once, and she'd be in the kitchen cooking his favorite meals. Oh James, I'm just exhausted, she'd sigh, playing the role of the overwhelmed housewife perfectly. Taking care of 2 growing girls is such hard work. The house is so big, and there's so much to do. Maybe a part-time nanny for the girls? And perhaps a housekeeper to help with the cleaning? But it's so expensive. Of course, Dad would immediately agree. Anything to make things easier for you, dear. Just tell me how much you need. I'd watch from the stairs as Sarah collected the checks or cash, knowing that money would never go to any nanny or housekeeper. I was doing all that work for free, after all. But I couldn't say anything. Sarah had made sure of that. You see how easily your father cut off contact with his own mother, she'd whispered to me one day when Dad was in the shower. I convinced him to do that. Just imagine what I could make him believe about you if you don't behave. That threat hung over me constantly. I'd seen how quickly Dad had turned against Grandma. Would he do the same to me? I couldn't risk it. So I stayed quiet and did whatever Sarah demanded. While I scrubbed floors and did laundry, Sarah spent Dad's household help money on herself and Emma. She'd come home from the beauty salon with fresh highlights and manicured nails, shopping bags full of designer clothes for Emma dangling from her arms. Here, Rose, she'd toss me a bag from the clearance rack at the discount store. I got you some things too. They're not quite as nice as Emma's, but beggars can't be choosers, right? The worst was when she'd look at me with that curl of disgust in her lip, usually when I was doing something she considered beneath her, like scrubbing the toilets or mopping the kitchen floor. God, you look just like your grandmother right now, she'd sneer. That same stubborn, judgmental expression. No wonder she ended up alone, and no wonder you will too if you don't learn your place. Those words would echo in my head at night as I lay in bed, exhausted from another day of being Sarah's secret servant. I'd think about Grandma, wondering if she ever thought about me, wondering if she knew what was happening in our house. Sarah's mother, who insisted I call her Grandma Linda, lived just a few blocks away from us. But unlike my real grandmother who'd been forced out of my life, Linda made it clear from the start that she didn't consider me family. "Oh, Sarah, darling," she'd coo when we visited, pulling Emma into her lap while completely ignoring my presence. "It must be so difficult for you, having to raise someone else's child. And spending all that money on her too." Sarah would put on her victim face, the same one she'd perfected for Dad. "It is hard, Mom. Rose is becoming so difficult lately. So angry and disobedient. Sometimes I wonder if I'm doing the right thing, trying to raise her as my own." I'd sit quietly in the corner of Linda's living room, pretending to read a book while they talked about me as if I wasn't even there. Linda would shower Emma with gifts, new toys, pretty dresses, expensive dolls, while giving me disapproving glances. Linda would take Emma for special grandmother-granddaughter outings, to the zoo, to the movies, to the park, while I was left behind. Sarah would remind me to be grateful that Linda tolerated me at all. After all, she'd say with that cruel smile, "You're not really her granddaughter, are you? Just like I'm not really your mother." We're stuck with each other, unfortunately. As I approached my 12th birthday, Sarah's demands increased exponentially. The cleaning schedule became more rigorous, the standards impossibly high. Every surface had to sparkle, every floor had to shine, every piece of laundry had to be perfectly folded, and heaven help me if I fell behind. "Look at these windows," she'd shriek, running her finger along the glass. "I can see streaks. Do it again. And don't forget to dust the blinds this time. Or, these bathroom tiles are still dirty. Get down on your hands and knees and scrub them properly. I want to see my reflection in them." The punishments for not meeting her standards were creative and cruel. She'd make me stay up late redoing tasks, knowing I had school the next day. She'd accidentally spill things right after I'd finished cleaning, forcing me to start over. She'd hide my phone or computer until the house met her impossible standards. But I never breathed a word of this to Dad. The threat of losing my chance at college loomed over everything. College represented freedom to me, a escape from this house, from Sarah's control, from the endless cleaning and cooking and serving. I dreamed about living in a dorm, having real friends, being normal. "One word to your father about our little arrangement," Sarah would threaten, "and you can kiss those college dreams goodbye. I'll make sure he knows what an ungrateful, lazy burden you've been." Who do you think he'll believe, his loving wife or his difficult teenage daughter? So I kept quiet, did my chores, and focused on my studies whenever I could find the time. I counted down the days until I could leave for college, telling myself that if I could just hold on long enough, I'd finally be free. But freedom seemed so far away, and Sarah's control only grew stronger with each passing day. Late at night, when the house was finally quiet and my hands were raw from cleaning, I'd lie in bed and imagine what my life could have been like if my mom hadn't died, or if Dad hadn't married Sarah, or if Grandma was still around. Several years have passed, and my grades had been slipping for months. Between the constant cleaning, cooking, and trying to keep up with Sarah's endless demands, I barely had time to study. Most nights, I'd fall asleep over my textbooks, exhausted from another day of being the family's secret servant. When Dad came home from his latest business trip, Sarah was ready with her newest performance. "James, we need to talk about Rose," she said during dinner, her voice dripping with fake concern. "Her teacher's called today. She's falling behind in almost every subject. I try to help her with homework, but she'd rather spend time on her phone than study. I think she needs consequences." "I'm not lazy," I finally burst out. "I'm trying my best." "Rose," Dad cut me off sternly. "Your grades are important. I work hard to provide for this family, and I expect you to take your education seriously. No phone for a month." I felt something snap inside me. Years of pent-up frustration and anger bubbled to the surface. I opened my mouth to tell him everything, about the cleaning, the cooking, how Sarah treated me when he was away. But Sarah must have seen the rebellion in my eyes. She pulled me aside after dinner, her nails digging into my arm. "Remember your grandmother?" she hissed. "Remember how easily your father chose me over her? One word from me, and you'll never see him again. Is that what you want?" The fight drained out of me. I knew she was right, she had Dad wrapped around her finger. I couldn't risk losing him too. A few weeks later, Sarah threw Emma a massive 10th birthday party. I watched from the kitchen as a dozen of Emma's friends invaded our house, carrying presents and squealing with excitement. Sarah had ordered mountains of food, pizzas, burgers, sodas, and a huge cake. "Rose," Sarah called out. "Bring more napkins. And make sure everyone has drinks." I became their reluctant server, bringing food and cleaning up spills, while Emma and her friends treated me like their personal maid. They deliberately knocked things over, laughing as I scrambled to clean up. "Hey, servant girl," one of Emma's friends called out. "We need more pizza over here." They all burst into giggles as I silently brought them another plate. By the time the party ended, the house looked like a disaster zone. Soda stains covered the carpet, pizza crusts were ground into the couch, and sticky candy wrappers were everywhere. "This place is disgusting," Sarah smeared after the last guest left. "Clean it up. All of it. And do a proper job this time." I was on my hands and knees scrubbing the floor when Dad's Skype call came through. Sarah yanked me up by my arm. "James," she answered sweetly. "You'll never believe what happened today. Rose had some friends over, and they completely trashed the living room. I'd been cleaning for hours." I stood there, stunned by her blatant lie, as Dad's face darkened on the screen. "Rose," he said severely, "you need to help Sarah more and start behaving better. She's been telling me about your attitude lately, and I'm very disappointed." That night, after finishing the cleaning and listening to another lecture from Sarah about my poor work, I cried myself to sleep. I was 15 years old, but I felt ancient, worn down by years of Sarah's psychological warfare and Dad's blind trust in her lies. The next day at school, I couldn't focus on anything. My friend Jessica noticed something was wrong during lunch break. "Rose, you look terrible. What happened?" I told her everything about Emma's party, the lies, the endless cleaning, and how Sarah had manipulated my father once again. To my surprise, Jessica didn't just offer sympathy, she had an idea. "Your phone," she said, her eyes lighting up. "It has a voice recorder, right? Record her. Record everything she says to you when your dad's not around. Your dad needs to hear the truth, Rose. The real Sarah, not the perfect stepmother act she puts on for him." That afternoon, I started recording. As soon as Dad's car left for his latest business trip, Sarah's mask came off. "This floor is filthy," she screamed while I was mopping. "Are you stupid or just lazy? Do it again." The phone in my pocket captured every word. Later, while I was dusting the living room, "You're just like your grandmother, useless and ungrateful. This house needs to be spotless, do you understand me?" The recordings kept piling up. Sarah ordering me around, calling me names, threatening me. But the biggest revelation came that evening. "Listen here," she cornered me in the kitchen. "If you don't shape up, I'll tell your father you've been stealing money from my purse. I'll say I caught you drinking alcohol in your room. Who do you think he'll believe?" I felt my phone recording in my pocket and managed to keep my face neutral, though my heart was racing. Later that night, Sarah's friend Diane came over. They opened a bottle of wine in the kitchen, not realizing I was still awake, my phone recording through the crack in my bedroom door. "Remember when I got rid of his mother?" Sarah laughed, the wine loosening her tongue. "That old bat was getting too nosy, asking too many questions about how I spent James's money. So I told him she threatened me, said she was trying to destroy our marriage. He bought it completely. Cut her off just like that." "You're brilliant," Diane giggled. "And he never suspected?" "Please, James believes anything I tell him. He's such a sucker for the helpless wife act. Meanwhile, I get his money, and his precious daughter does all my housework. It's perfect." They kept talking, revealing more and more of Sarah's manipulations and lies. My phone recorded it all. That night, after making sure Sarah was asleep, I sat at my computer, hands shaking. I created a new email to Dad and attached all the recordings. In the subject line, I wrote, "The truth about Sarah." The message was simple: "Dad, it's time you knew what your wife is really like when you're not around. Please listen to these recordings. All of them, Rose." 2 days after I sent the email, I was in the kitchen making dinner when I heard a car door slam. Looking through the window, I saw Dad's car in the driveway. He wasn't supposed to be home for another week. My heart started racing. The front door burst open with such force that the walls shook. Dad stormed in, his face a thundercloud of anger I'd never seen before. Sarah jumped up from the couch, dropping her magazine. "James," she stuttered, her face going pale. "What are you doing home?" "I know everything, Sarah." Dad's voice was deadly quiet. "Everything about how you've been treating my daughter." Sarah's eyes darted to me for a split second before she launched into her usual act. "Oh, James, has Rose been telling you lies again? You know how difficult she can be." Dad pulled out his phone. "Difficult? Let's talk about difficult, Sarah." He pressed play, and Sarah's own voice filled the room. "Listen here, if you don't shape up, I'll tell your father you've been stealing money." Sarah's face drained of all color. Dad played more recordings, her screaming at me to clean, calling me names, and finally, the conversation with Diane about manipulating Dad to cut off contact with Grandma. "You monster," Dad whispered when the recordings finished. "You absolute monster. Making my daughter into your personal servant? Lying about my mother? Using me for my money?" "James, I can explain," Sarah started, but Dad cut her off. "We're done. I'm divorcing you. I won't spend another minute married to someone who could abuse a child like this." He turned to me. "Rose, go pack your things. Only what you need right now, we'll get the rest later." 20 minutes later, we were in Dad's car, driving away from the only home I'd known for the past 8 years. Dad had made a few quick calls and arranged a furnished apartment for us. Once we were inside the apartment, Dad pulled me into a tight hug. I couldn't remember the last time he'd hugged me like this. "I'm so sorry, Rose," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I'm so sorry, I didn't see what was happening. I promise you, no one will ever hurt you like that again." The next morning, we drove to a small house on the other side of town. My heart skipped a beat when I realized where we were, Grandma's house. She opened the door before we could even knock. Despite not seeing her for years, I recognized her immediately, the same kind eyes, the same warm smile. Without a word, she pulled me into her arms. Dad broke down then, telling Grandma everything, the recordings, Sarah's abuse, the lies that had torn our family apart. Grandma listened, nodding sadly. I knew something was wrong, she said. Sarah never worked, just spent your money like water. When I tried to talk to her about it, she told me you were her money bag and she'd spend whatever she wanted. Then she threatened to turn you against me and keep you from seeing your grandchildren. And she did exactly that. I watched Dad's face crumple with shame as he realized how completely Sarah had manipulated him. But Grandma just took his hand and squeezed it, showing that same forgiveness and love I remembered from my childhood. The divorce proceedings stretched on for several months. Sarah fought tooth and nail for everything she could get, but in the end, the judge ordered an even split of all assets. Dad let her keep the old house, neither of us wanted to live there anymore, too many bad memories, and he used his half to buy us a beautiful new home closer to Grandma. Emma chose to stay with Sarah, which hurt Dad deeply, but didn't surprise me. Sarah had spent years molding Emma into her mini-me, poisoning her against Dad, just as she'd tried to do with me. When Dad attempted to maintain a relationship with Emma, she blocked his number. She's just like her mother now, I overheard him telling Grandma one day, his voice heavy with regret. But while we lost Emma, our own little family grew stronger. Dad started working mostly from home, cutting back on business trips. He hired a real housekeeper this time, a kind woman named Maria, who taught me that cleaning could actually be peaceful when it wasn't forced on you. The therapy sessions were Dad's idea. You've been through trauma, Rose, he said one morning over breakfast. We both have. And we need help processing it. Dr. Anderson, my therapist, helped me understand that none of what happened was my fault. In our joint sessions, Dad would often break down crying. I should have protected you, he'd say. I should have seen what was happening. But I didn't blame him anymore. Sarah had been manipulating him just as much as she'd been abusing me. She was an expert at playing the victim while making others suffer. Grandma became a regular part of our lives again, coming over for Sunday dinners and helping me with college applications. My grades improved dramatically now that I actually had time to study. The dark circles under my eyes faded, and I started sleeping through the night without anxiety attacks. Sometimes I'd catch glimpses of Sarah and Emma around town. They'd turn away quickly, Sarah pulling Emma close as if to protect her from me. It was ironic, really. Sarah had spent years painting me as the villain in Emma's eyes, when she was the monster all along. But I didn't waste energy being angry anymore. Instead, I focused on my future. I'd been accepted to several colleges, including my dream school with a partial scholarship. Dad insisted on paying the rest, saying it was the least he could do. You deserve every opportunity, he told me. And I'm so proud of how strong you've been. Sitting here now in my bedroom, surrounded by college brochures and acceptance letters, I can hardly believe how much my life has changed in the past year. The scared, servile girl I used to be feels like a stranger. Now I know what real family love feels like, not the conditional, manipulative kind Sarah offered, but the genuine support and care I get from Dad and Grandma. Tomorrow we have another therapy session, and next week I need to make my final college decision. But for the first time in years, I'm not afraid of the future. I'm excited about it. The nightmare is over, and I'm finally free to be myself. Sarah tried to break me, but instead, she made me stronger. And while I'll never forget what happened in that house, I won't let it define me either.
I never thought I'd be the kind of person to tell about my life, but here I am. My name is Anna, and I'm 32, stuck in a marriage that's been going downhill for longer than I care to admit. Let me tell you about the people in my life, starting with my husband, Michael. Michael was charming when we first met. He had this easy smile and a way of making everyone feel important. But that was before his true colors showed and before his parents, Evelyn and George, became a constant shadow in our lives. Evelyn and George, where do I even start? They're the kind of people who think the world owes them something. They're Michael's parents, and from day one, they've been a thorn in my side. They're the reason Michael and I are on the brink of divorce. Our story starts on a typical evening at our house. Michael had just come home from work, and I was in the kitchen trying to get dinner ready after a long day at my job. Anna, why isn't dinner ready yet? Michael's voice was sharp, a tone that had become all too familiar. I sighed, feeling the day's fatigue weigh on me. I just got home, Michael. It's been a crazy day at work. He rolled his eyes. Excuses. You know my parents are coming over. They expect a proper meal. Yes, the royal visit. Evelyn and George treated our home like their personal restaurant. They'd come over, criticize my cooking, talk endlessly about their needs and how we should be doing more for them. It was exhausting. Then, as if on cue, the doorbell rang. Michael hurried to open the door, revealing his parents, who barged in as if they owned the place. Anna, dear, I hope you're making something good tonight. We're so tired of the same old dishes, Evelyn said, not even bothering with a hello. George chimed in, yeah, and make sure there's enough. You always cook so little. I clenched my jaw, trying to keep my cool. I'm making spaghetti bolognese. It'll be ready in a bit. Evelyn frowned. Spaghetti? Again? Well, I suppose it'll have to do. The evening went as usual. Evelyn and George complained about everything, the food, their latest neighborhood gossip, and how we weren't living up to their expectations. Michael just nodded along, never once standing up for me. After dinner, while I was cleaning up, Michael confronted me in the kitchen. You could try being nicer to my parents, Anna. They're just old and set in their ways. I slammed a plate into the dishwasher, my patience wearing thin. Nicer? Michael, they treat me like a maid, and you just let them. When are you going to realize that your parents are manipulating us? Michael's face hardened. They're my parents, Anna. They come first. If you can't understand that, maybe you shouldn't be here. That stung. It was clear where his loyalties lay, and it wasn't with me. That night, as I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, I knew something had to change. I couldn't keep living like this, in a home where I felt like a stranger, married to a man who put his parents above our marriage. And that's just the beginning of my story. A story of how I found myself trapped in a marriage that was nothing like I had imagined, with a husband who had become a stranger and in-laws who saw me as nothing more than someone to use and belittle. If I thought my marriage with Michael was tough, dealing with his parents, Evelyn and George, was a whole different level of challenging. They had this knack for making everything about them, and they were experts at pushing my buttons. Let me paint a picture of a typical Sunday afternoon. Sundays were family days, as Evelyn liked to call them, which basically meant Michael and I had no say in how we spent our time. This particular Sunday, they showed up unannounced, as usual. I opened the door to find Evelyn standing there with her trademark disapproving look. Anna, we need to talk about your garden. It's becoming an eyesore, she said, pushing past me into the house. I bristled at her tone. We've been busy, Evelyn. The garden is not our top priority right now. George followed her in, grumbling, busy doing what? You don't even have kids to take care of. Before I could respond, Michael came in from the living room, all smiles. Mom, Dad, glad you could make it. Anna was just about to start lunch. I shot Michael a look, but he avoided my gaze. Typical. As I got busy in the kitchen, Evelyn and George started in on their usual routine. They complained about their neighbors, the cost of living, and how nobody respected the good old days anymore. Lunch was served, and with it came more complaints. Evelyn to George, this chicken is dry, Anna. Can't you do anything right? George to Evelyn, and these vegetables are overcooked. You'd think someone who works from home could manage a decent meal. I clenched my fists under the table, trying to keep my cool. Michael just kept eating, pretending not to hear. After lunch, the real fun began. Evelyn started with her demands. Evelyn to Anna, we need you to drive us to the doctor's tomorrow. We can't rely on public transport at our age. I was taken aback. But I have work meetings all day tomorrow. Can't you take a cab? George snorted. Why should we spend money on a cab when we have you? I looked to Michael for support, but he just shrugged. You know how they are, Anna. Just do it for peace. I felt my anger rising. Do it for peace? When do my needs get considered in this family? The rest of the day was more of the same. Evelyn needed help with her phone, George wanted advice on his garden, and I was expected to cater to their every whim. That evening, after they finally left, I confronted Michael. Anna to Michael, why do you let them walk all over us? Why can't you stand up to them? Michael was defensive. They're my parents, Anna. They're old and set in their ways. We just have to deal with it. But at what cost, Michael? Our happiness? Our marriage? He didn't have an answer to that. He never did. I went to bed that night feeling alone and unsupported. It was becoming clear that Michael's loyalty to his parents was overshadowing our relationship. And I was starting to wonder if I was fighting a losing battle. Now, let me tell you about how Michael, the once charming man I married, started to change. It was like watching a flower wilt, except it wasn't as pretty. One evening, I came home late from work, tired and hungry. I had texted Michael earlier that I would be late, but when I walked in, what I saw made my blood boil. There was Michael, feet up on the coffee table, watching TV, and the house was a mess. Dirty dishes in the sink, takeout boxes on the counter, you get the picture. Michael, I thought you were going to clean up today. I asked, trying to keep the frustration out of my voice. He barely glanced at me. I was busy, had a tough day. You can clean up, right? I was stunned. Busy? Doing what? You've been home all day. Michael turned off the TV and stood up, his face getting red. You think you're the only one who gets tired? I work hard too, you know. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. But you promised to take care of the house today. And I've been working non-stop. He scoffed. Oh, please. Your job is a breeze compared to mine. Just clean up and stop complaining. I was so angry I could barely speak. This wasn't the man I married. The man I married would have understood, would have helped. Days turned into weeks, and Michael's attitude only got worse. He started going out with his buddies on Fridays, coming home late, drunk, and expecting me to just deal with it. One Friday night, he stumbled in around 2 a.m., reeking of alcohol. Where have you been? I demanded. Do you have any idea what time it is? Michael sneered at me. Out, having fun. Something you wouldn't understand. I was at my wit's end. Fun? Well, I'm here worrying about you. This isn't what I signed up for, Michael. He just laughed. What? You want me to stay home and be bored like you? No thanks. I realized then that Michael wasn't the man I fell in love with anymore. He had become someone else, someone who didn't care about our relationship or my feelings. One night, after another argument about his late nights, I tried to talk to him. Michael, we need to talk about us. About our marriage, I said, my voice shaking. He didn't even look at me. What's there to talk about? If you're unhappy, that's your problem. That hit me like a ton of bricks. My problem? Wasn't this our life, our marriage? I thought we were a team, I said, trying to hold back tears. Michael shrugged. Things change, Anna. Maybe you should too. I went to bed that night feeling more alone than ever. It was clear that Michael's transformation wasn't just a phase, it was a complete shift in who he was. And I was left wondering if there was any of the man I married left in him. They say there's a moment in every troubled story when things reach a climax, and for me, that moment came unexpectedly on a crisp Wednesday evening. I remember walking into the house, the air thick with tension. Michael was sitting at the kitchen table, an unreadable expression on his face. "We need to talk, Anna," he said, not wasting any time. I could feel my heart pounding. "Okay, what's up?" Michael took a deep breath. "I think it's time we face the truth. Our marriage, it's not working. We should get a divorce." His words hit me like a ton of bricks. I knew things were bad, but divorce? That was a big step. "Are you sure? I mean, is this really what you want?" He nodded, his face set. "Yes, it's what I want. It's for the best." Before I could process this, the door swung open, and in walked Evelyn and George, Michael's parents. They had this triumphant look on their faces, like they'd just won the lottery. Evelyn was the first to speak, her voice dripping with faux sympathy. "Oh, Anna, we heard the news. We're so relieved you and Michael are being sensible about this." George chimed in, his tone smug. "Yes, it's for the best. And don't forget the marriage contract you signed. You won't be getting a cent of our son's estate." I was speechless. Not only were they happy about the divorce, but they also had the audacity to remind me of that prenup, the one they had practically forced me to sign before the wedding. I turned to Michael. "So, this is it, then?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Michael finally looked at me. "Yes, Anna, this is it." I felt a strange sense of relief mixed with a deep, aching sadness. It was over. The marriage I had worked so hard for was coming to an end, and his parents couldn't be happier about it. So, in the midst of all this divorce mess, something unbelievable happened. I won the lottery. Yes, you heard that right. Anna, who never won more than $1 on a scratch-off, won $7 million. It happened on a Tuesday. I was at the gas station, just buying a coffee, and on a whim, I bought a lottery ticket. Didn't even think about it until I checked the numbers at home. I remember staring at the ticket, my hands shaking, not believing my eyes. I didn't tell anyone, not even Michael. With the divorce and everything, it seemed like a bad idea. But Michael found out anyway. He stormed into the house one evening, waving a copy of the lottery announcement that had my name on it. "Is this true? Did you win the lottery?" he demanded, his eyes wide with disbelief. I nodded, clutching the winning ticket in my hand. "Yes, I won." Michael's expression changed from shock to something greedy. "We're still married, Anna. That means I'm entitled to half of that money." I couldn't help but laugh, a bitter, humorless sound. "Entitled? Really, Michael? After everything, you think you're entitled to my winnings?" He took a step closer, his voice rising. "Yes, I do. It's only fair. You wouldn't even have bought that ticket if we weren't married." I shook my head, amazed at his audacity. "Fair? You want to talk about fair now? Remember the prenup? The one your parents were so happy about? It says we have no claim to each other's property, remember?" Michael's face turned red, his anger palpable. "That's different. This is different." I stood my ground, holding the ticket tightly. "No, it's not. I won this money, Michael. It's mine. And I'm not giving you a cent." He looked like he was about to explode. "You can't do this to me, Anna. It's my right." I felt a surge of strength, a sense of power I hadn't felt in a long time. "You're right?" "No, Michael, it's not. This is where I draw the line. I'm keeping the money. All of it." I put the lottery ticket in my safe, a smile on my face. He stormed out of the house, slamming the door behind him. I stood there, the winning ticket in my hand, feeling like I had just won more than just money. I had won a chance to start over, to be free from Michael and his greedy, overbearing parents. So, after all the tension and drama with Michael and his parents, something utterly absurd happened. I came back from a business trip and found my safe, the one where I'd stored the fake lottery ticket, was gone. I walked into my house and saw the empty space where the safe used to be. Instead of panic or anger, I just started laughing. The whole situation was so ridiculous, so over the top, that I couldn't help it. I was pretty sure Michael and his parents were behind this clumsy heist. I didn't bother calling them. Instead, I started cleaning up, still chuckling to myself. The image of Michael, Evelyn, and George trying to lug that heavy metal safe out of my house was too funny to ignore. And then, the thought of them trying to hack it open, without the keys, was the cherry on top. As I swept up the mess, I imagined their frustration when they'd finally crack it open to find a worthless piece of paper instead of the real lottery ticket. The real ticket, safe and sound in a bank deposit box, was far from their greedy hands. The absurdity of the situation was almost too much. They had stooped to breaking into my house, stealing a massive safe, all for nothing. I couldn't decide if it was tragic or hilarious. I sat down on the couch, amidst the disarray of what used to be my living room, still laughing. If they thought they could outsmart me with such a clumsy plan, they were sorely mistaken. I went to bed that night not with worry or fear, but with a smile on my face, thinking about their faces when will they understand their grand theft had been for nothing. It was a small victory, but in the grand scheme of things, it felt huge. So, after discovering my safe was gone and the fake ticket inside it, things took a turn I never expected. I got a call from Michael, and by the tone of his voice, I knew something was up. "Anna, you have to help us," he said, sounding desperate. I was confused. "Help you? What happened?" "We're at the police station. They arrested us," he blurted out. I smiled. "Arrested? For what?" "For trying to cash in the lottery ticket." "But it's a fake, Anna." "It's a fake," he almost shouted into the phone. I couldn't help but laugh. "Of course, it's a fake, Michael. Did you really think I'd leave the real ticket in the safe after everything?" There was silence on the other end, and then Michael said, "You need to come here and tell them it's a misunderstanding." I sighed. "Fine, I'll be there soon." At the police station, I saw Michael, Evelyn, and George sitting in a holding area. They looked completely bewildered. As I approached, Evelyn called out, "Anna, tell them we didn't steal anything. We thought the ticket was real." I looked at them, feeling a strange mix of triumph and pity. "You broke into my house and stole my safe. And now you're surprised you got caught." Michael jumped in. "But the ticket was fake. You have to tell them it was a misunderstanding." I shook my head. "No, Michael. It wasn't a misunderstanding, you stole my safe and now you're facing the consequences." I turned to the police officer. The ticket in the safe was a copy. I made it to put in a frame. The real ticket is in a safety deposit box. The police officer nearby nodded. "We need your statement, ma'am, to confirm the theft." As I gave my statement, recounting how they had stolen the safe with the fake ticket, I felt a sense of closure. It was the end of a chapter in my life, one filled with deceit and manipulation. Leaving the station, I couldn't help but feel a little lighter. Michael and his parents had shown their true colors, and now they were the ones in trouble. It was a fitting end to their greed and deceit. So much has happened, but now, I stand on the brink of a new chapter in my life. With the divorce finalized, I've closed a painful chapter. But there's more. Michael and his parents have been charged with theft. The irony of their situation, given all their greed and manipulation, isn't lost on me. Sitting in my lawyer's office, signing the last of the divorce papers, I couldn't help but feel a mix of relief and anticipation. Mr. Thompson, my lawyer, handed me the final document and gave me a reassuring nod. "Anna, you're officially divorced now. And with the charges against your ex-husband and his parents, they might be looking at real jail time. How do you feel? He asked, his voice gentle yet professional. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of my words. Honestly, Mr. Thompson, I feel like I can finally breathe. It's been a long road, but I'm ready to move on. He smiled, understandingly. Just remember, you have a new life ahead of you. A life with endless possibilities and a substantial lottery win to help you along the way. I smiled back, feeling a sense of empowerment. Oh, I have plans, Mr. Thompson. Travel, new experiences, and maybe a bit of adventure. It's time I lived life for myself. Stepping out of the office, I felt lighter, like a burden had been lifted off my shoulders. As I walked, I dialed my best friend, Lisa. Lisa, it's official. I'm divorced, and Michael and his parents, they're facing the consequences of their actions, I said, a small smile on my lips. Lisa's voice was full of support. Anna, I'm so proud of you. You've come out of this stronger than ever. So, what's next for you? I gazed down the bustling street, my heart full of hope. I'm going to travel, see the world. I want to experience everything I've missed out on. That's amazing, Anna. You deserve every bit of happiness and adventure. And if they get jail time, well, that's just poetic justice, Lisa said, her tone light but sincere. We chatted for a while, making plans, and for the first time in a long while, I felt genuinely excited about the future. As I ended the call, I took a moment to reflect on everything that had happened. The lies, the betrayal, the pain, it was all behind me now. Ahead lay a path of new beginnings, adventures, and the chance to rediscover who I am. I started walking, a spring in my step, ready to embrace whatever came next. This wasn't just an end, it was the start of something new, something beautiful. And as I walked away, I realized this was just the beginning of my story. A story where I was the author, and anything was possible.
From the get-go, I knew what I was about. Even as a little kid, my dolls and teddy bears were the healthiest on the block, all thanks to Dr. Julia. I'd wrap their tiny limbs in bandages made from torn pillowcases, and I'd cook up medicine from crushed berries and water. There, I'd coo to my stuffed bear, Teddy. Doc Julia will fix you right up. He'd sit there, all button eyes and floppy ears, looking like he believed every word. My parents caught on quick to my antics. Every evening, they'd sit on the rickety couch while I explained my latest surgery or miracle cure. My dad would raise his eyebrows and say, "So, Dr. Julia, will Teddy make it through the night?" With hands on my hips, I'd assure him, "Dad, Teddy's gonna be right as rain. Just you watch." By the time I hit school, my sights were set on real human medicine. I signed up for the first aid club as soon as I could scribble my name on the sign-up sheet. I soaked up everything like a sponge at those meetings, from bandaging sprains to performing CPR on dummies. "Hey, Julia, take it easy there. That dummy's already dead," my buddy Mark would joke as I pumped away at chest compressions. "Better practice on the dead one than need it and mess up on a live one," I'd shoot back, all focused and serious, even then. High school flew by, and it was no surprise to anyone when I said I was going off to university for nursing. My folks weren't exactly swimming in cash, but they made it happen. Mom took on extra shifts at the diner, and Dad did some odd jobs on weekends. The day I left, Mom hugged me tight, her apron still dusted with flour. "Make us proud, Jules. Not that you haven't already," she whispered, teary-eyed. "I will, Mom. And I'll come back and fix up all those cuts and burns from the diner," I promised, trying to lighten the mood. University was a whole new ball game. I chose one in a city so different from our sleepy little town that it might as well have been another planet. I stayed on after graduation, working first in a public clinic. That place was a madhouse, always bustling, always something to do. I loved it, though. Loved the grit and hustle, loved the feeling of actually making a difference. "Julia, we need you in room 4, stat," my supervisor would call out. On cue, I'd sprint down the hall, my nurse's shoes squeaking on the linoleum floor. On it, I'd yell back, ready for whatever waited behind that door. But, after a few years, the itch to do something more crept up on me. That's when I stumbled into the world of cosmetology. It wasn't a far leap, really, still helping people, just in a different way. I took courses at night, aced them, and snagged a license. Before I knew it, I was working at a swanky private clinic, trading bandages for beauty creams and fillers. It was another kind of chaos, less about life and death, more about beauty and confidence. But even that wasn't enough after a while. I wanted my name on the door, wanted control over how things were done. So, I did the craziest thing yet, I took out a loan and opened my own place. Just a small office to start, but it was mine. All mine. My days became a blur of clients, treatments, and endless paperwork. Nights and weekends were swallowed up by marketing plans and budget balancing. Friendships boiled down to quick texts and even quicker coffee runs. "Girl, when you gonna take a break?" Annie, a friend from nursing school, would ask during our rare meetups. "When I'm dead, probably," I'd laugh, though the thought wasn't too far from the truth. So there I was, knee-deep in my dream, making it happen one long day at a time. It was tough, tougher than I'd thought, but it was worth it. Every new client, every successful treatment, they all added up. I was building something that mattered, at least, to me. Life's funny, you know? Just when you think you've got it all sorted, it throws you a curveball. For me, that curveball was Michael. I met him at a bash Annie dragged me to. The kind where the music's too loud, the drinks are too strong, and I'm wondering what I'm even doing there. But then, there he was, leaned against the bar with a smirk that could stop traffic. "Hey, you look like you'd rather be anywhere but here," he chuckled, sliding over with a couple of beers in hand. I couldn't help but laugh, raising an eyebrow. "That obvious, huh?" "Only to a fellow sufferer. I'm Michael, by the way," he said, handing me a beer. "Julia," I replied, taking the drink. We clinked bottles, and that was it. We talked all night about everything, work, life, our crazy dreams. Turned out, he was a graphic designer, a creative soul, but with a love for the simple things, just like me. Fast forward 2 years, and we're picking out rings. Life with him was easy, like a Sunday morning. His mom, Linda, was a real gem too, helping us plan the wedding like she was born for it. "Oh, honey, these flowers will look divine with the tablecloths," Linda would say, bustling around with that planner of hers that never left her side. "Thanks, Linda, I'd be lost without you," I'd admit, meaning every word. She had an eye for detail and a way of making everything seem effortless. The big day came and went in a blur of vows, laughter, and dancing. Michael moved into my rented apartment shortly after. We sat down, spread all our bills and dreams on the kitchen table, and figured out a game plan like two generals before a battle. "I'll handle the everyday stuff, groceries, utilities, the works. You just focus on knocking out that business loan," Michael proposed, all serious and businesslike. "Sounds like a plan," I agreed, relieved to have him on board with the finances. We even started talking about saving up for a house, maybe a couple of kids down the line. Everything was clicking into place. But then, things got weird with Linda. She started acting all distant and cold, a total 180 from the wedding planner extraordinaire I knew. No more invites over for Sunday dinner, no calls, just radio silence. "Babe, what's up with your mom? Did I do something wrong?" I finally asked Michael one evening, after weeks of getting the cold shoulder. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Look, Julia, Mom's, well, she's got some health issues, mental health stuff. It's making her act out. It's not you, I promise. Should I talk to her, try to smooth things over?" I suggested, though the thought of confronting Linda made my stomach twist. No, let's just give her space. I don't want you caught up in her drama," Michael insisted, his tone final. I was relieved, to be honest. Dealing with in-law drama on top of running a business was not how I envisioned married life. So, I backed off, focusing on my clients and that mountain of a loan I was determined to conquer. A year into our marriage, and the sweet setup Michael and I had was crumbling. He came up to me one evening, looking all kinds of serious. "Julia, listen, Mom's not doing great. Her health's gone downhill fast. I need to help her out," he started, avoiding my eyes. "And by help her out, you mean?" I prodded, already dreading the answer. "I mean financially. I gotta take care of her bills for a bit," he said, as if it was just a minor change in plans. "A bit? Michael, what does that mean for us? For our plans?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "It means I need you to cover our stuff. Just for a while, babe, I promise," he said, with a look that meant he was pleading. So, there I was, thrown into covering everything. Rent, utilities, groceries, you name it, I paid it. My days at the office stretched longer and longer. I skipped lunches, worked through weekends, took every client I could get my hands on. One night, I called my folks, voice nearly breaking. "Hey, Dad, it's me. Things are a bit tight right now. Would you mind helping out a bit?" "Of course, sweetheart. We'll send a little something your way," Dad said, his voice full of worry. This went on for over a year. I managed to pay off the loan from my office. It was mine, all mine, but the victory felt hollow. I was bone-tired, running on fumes. One evening, I couldn't hold it in any longer. "Michael, this temporary thing has been over a year. I'm burned out. It's too much." He looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time in months. "I'll get a second job. I'll sort it out," he said, finally showing some spine. True to his word, he got that second job, but it was like trading one problem for another. Now, he was never home, and when he was either too tired to talk or too stressed to be the man I married. Months rolled by, and nothing changed. The money he gave me for the house was a joke, barely enough to cover a week's groceries. "We need to talk, Michael. This isn't working. Where's all your money going?" I demanded one night, frustration boiling over. "I'm doing everything I can, Julia. All my money? It's going to Mom, to her care. You know that," he shot back, voice rising. "That's not good enough. We have our own life, our own bills. What about us?" I yelled back. He paused, then dropped a bombshell. "Maybe it's time to think about selling your office. We could use that money." "Sell my office? Are you out of your mind? That's my dream, Michael. My everything." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "It's just money, Julia. We can start over, do something else," he argued, not getting it at all. "Just money? No, Michael. That office is me, it's my hard work, my passion. You want me to sell my soul too?" I snapped, each word sharp as a knife. Our home became a war zone after that. Nights filled with shouting matches, days filled with silence. He'd slam doors, I'd throw pillows. It was ugly, real ugly. "You don't see it, do you? I'm busting my back here, for us, for my mom," he'd yell during our fights. "For us? When's the last time you did something for us, Michael? I'm carrying us all on my back and it's breaking, damn it." I'd yell right back. The tension was thick, choking. I loved him, I really did. But I was starting to wonder if that love was enough to keep patching up the cracks that kept spreading through our life like wildfire. The day was dragging like it had lead in its shoes, and I was set for a long afternoon at the office when, out of the blue, I got a call. One of my regulars had to cancel. Annoyed but secretly relieved, I decided to head home early for a change. As I turned the key and pushed open the door, there was Michael, mid-living room, looking like he'd been caught in some secret ritual. In his hands, a stark black morning suit. "What's going on, Michael? Why the suit?" I asked, dropping my bag by the door, confusion written all over my face. His mouth opened and closed, his eyes darting away before he managed to spit it out. "It's my mom, Julia. She passed away last night." The news hit like a sucker punch. Despite everything, Linda had been family. "Oh, Michael, I'm so sorry. When's the funeral?" "Tomorrow," he muttered, still not meeting my eyes. Something was off in his tone, a bitterness that didn't sit right with me. "I'll come with you. We'll get through this together," I said, stepping closer, reaching out to touch his arm. He flinched, stepping back as if I'd slapped him. "No. You're not coming. Mom made it clear, she didn't want you there. In her last request, she said no." I froze, hurt slicing through me. "What do you mean? Why wouldn't she want me there?" Without a word, he shuffled through his pockets, pulled out a crumpled piece of paper, and handed it over. The note was scrawled in a shaky hand, nothing like the elegant script I remembered from the birthday cards Linda sent me. It bluntly said, "Julia is not to attend my funeral." The rest of the day, I was in a fog. Hurt, confused, angry. After Michael left, claiming he needed to arrange things for the funeral, I dug up an old box from our closet. It was stuffed with every card Linda had ever sent me. I laid them out on the kitchen table, side by side with the funeral note. The differences were glaring. My heart raced, something was very wrong here. That evening, I moved around like a robot, rescheduling my appointments for the week. I wasn't going to let this go. I needed answers. Was it grief making him act out? Or something darker, something deeper? By the time I crawled into bed, my mind was made up. I'd be at that funeral tomorrow, hidden in the back if need be. I needed to say goodbye to Linda, or at least understand why she'd turn against me without a word. Whatever it took, I was going to unravel this mystery. The morning air was crisp as I slipped out the door, telling Michael I was headed to work. Instead, I nestled into my car parked a block away, the engine idling softly as I watched our apartment door. Michael emerged a few minutes later, all decked out in his morning suit, his face a mask of somber grace. As he drove off, I waited an extra beat, ensuring he didn't spot me, before heading in the opposite direction towards Linda's place. Driving felt surreal, like I was moving through a thick fog, every turn and stop sign a reminder of the bizarre turn my life had taken. I was supposed to be mourning a woman I respected, not playing detective. Yet here I was, fueled by doubt and a gnawing need for the truth. I arrived at Linda's house expecting to find a gathering, cars parked along the curb, somber faces, maybe even the distant sound of a eulogy being rehearsed. But nothing. The street was painfully quiet, no signs of a funeral or any gathering. Puzzled, I checked the time, thinking maybe I got it wrong. After waiting 10 tense minutes with no one showing up, I decided to ring the bell, just in case. When the door swung open, there stood Linda, very much alive, staring back at me. My heart leaped to my throat, and I couldn't hold back a startled scream. Linda jumped back, equally shocked. "Julia, what on earth are you doing here? Why are you screaming?" Catching my breath, I managed. "Michael, he said you were dead. That today was your funeral." Her face twisted from confusion to horror. "What, dead? I'm right here." "Call him, Julia. Call Michael now and find out what this nonsense is about." Before I could pull out my phone, it buzzed with a notification. Michael had started a live stream on Instagram. I clicked the link, my hands trembling. There he was, standing in a cemetery, his face somber as he accepted condolences from a small crowd gathered around a grave. "What in the world?" I muttered, the scene unfurling on my screen making less and less sense. Linda peered over my shoulder, her expression hardening as she watched. "We need to go there. Now." I nodded, too shocked to speak. We both scrambled for our things. "Grab your purse, Linda. I'll wait in the car," I said, my voice barely a whisper over the pounding in my chest. As Linda and I drove to the funeral, the car was thick with a tension you could cut with a knife. I kept glancing over at her, watching her face shift through confusion, anger, and sadness, all swirling around like a storm. It was me who broke the silence. "Linda, why did Michael say you were sick?" She turned to look at me, her eyes sharp. "Sick? I haven't been sick a day since Michael was a boy." "What's he been telling you?" I swallowed, feeling my stomach twist into knots. "He said you were getting worse, that he needed to help you. He's been taking our money, saying it was going towards your medical bills." Linda's face flushed a deep red. "Medical bills? That lying?" She cut herself off, taking a deep breath. "Julia, I gave him money because he told me you were struggling. Said your business was failing and you were drowning in debt." "My business? Failing? It's the only thing that's been keeping us afloat," I exclaimed, feeling betrayed all over again. "He told me you wanted nothing to do with me, that you disliked me." Linda shook her head, her voice thick with emotion. "I never said those things. I've missed our talks. He told me you wanted space, that you couldn't handle the stress of our relationship." By the time we arrived at the cemetery, we were a united front, ready to confront whatever Michael was entangled in. We kept to the edges of the gathered crowd, not wanting to draw attention to ourselves. From a distance, we could see Michael, standing solemnly by a gravesite draped in flowers. "Let's find out what's going on here," I whispered to Linda, and we approached a group of mourners standing away from the main cluster. "Excuse me," I said, my voice low. "We're a bit lost. Can you tell us whose funeral this is?" A middle-aged woman looked at us with sad eyes. "It's a tragedy, really. Young woman, been sick for a long time. Passed away too soon. That man over there," she nodded towards Michael. "He's her husband. Poor soul, they were only married a year." Linda and I exchanged a glance, shock registering on both our faces. "And her family?" Linda asked, her voice steady, despite the tremor I knew she felt. "They're devastated, planning to leave everything to him, as they were very close," another bystander chimed in. We thanked them, stepping back to process the bombshell. Michael had a whole other life, one where he played the grieving widower to a woman none of us knew. The deceit was staggering. As the funeral procession started to move, Linda gripped my arm. "We need to follow this through, see where he goes after this." "Agreed," I said, my voice grim. "We can't confront him yet, not until we know everything." We got back into the car, trailing the procession from a safe distance. My mind was racing, every piece of the puzzle so far, painting a picture so ugly I could hardly believe it was real. "We'll get to the bottom of this, Linda. Whatever it takes," I promised her as we drove. She nodded, her face set in determination. Linda and I pulled up behind the last of the cars in the funeral procession, parking a little way down the street from a large, beautiful house with its door swung wide open. We exchanged a glance, steeling ourselves for whatever lay ahead, and then we walked towards the house, the murmur of voices guiding us to the living room. Inside, a man, older, with a somber, dignified air, was speaking to Michael, his voice thick with grief. "You're our son now, and everything we have, our home, our business, it will all be yours." It's what she would have wanted after everything. Michael, his face wet with tears, looked up and responded with a choked voice. "Thank you. I've lost my parents long ago. Being part of your family means everything to me." Linda couldn't take it anymore. She burst into the room, her voice loud and clear, cutting through the thick air. "When exactly did I die, Michael?" The room fell silent. Heads turned. Michael's face went from sorrow to shock in an instant. "Mom, what are you doing here?" I stepped up beside Linda, my own anger flaring. "Yeah, Michael, explain to us all how you could be married again when your wife is very much alive." The elderly couple looked from Michael to us, confusion etching their faces. "What is this? Who are these people?" the woman asked, her voice trembling. Linda took a deep breath, her eyes never leaving Michael's face. "I'm his mother, and this is his wife. His first and only legal wife, as far as we knew." The revelation hit like a thunderclap. The room erupted with voices, the couple demanding an explanation from Michael. He stumbled over his words, trying to maintain his composure. There's been a misunderstanding. No, Michael, no more lies. Linda shouted, stepping forward. Tell them the truth. Under the weight of so many eyes, Michael's facade crumbled. I needed the money, he blurted out. I lost big at cards. It was supposed to be temporary, just until I could pay back the debts. The couple recoiled, horror dawning on their faces as they absorbed the depth of his betrayal. You deceived us at the cost of our daughter's memory, the man said, his voice low and menacing. You will leave our house, and we will reclaim every cent spent on you. Expect to hear from our lawyers. Michael turned to me, desperation in his eyes. Julia, please. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I can fix this. I looked at him, really looked at the man I had married, seeing him for the first time. Fix it? Michael, it's broken beyond repair. There's nothing left to fix. As we stepped out onto the street, Michael followed, falling to his knees. Please, Julia. I'm scared. They'll kill me if I don't pay them back. Linda stopped, turning to look at her son one last time. You should have thought of that before you betrayed everyone who loved you. I can't help you. Not anymore. With that, Linda walked away from her son, her steps firm. I followed, not once looking back at the man sobbing on the pavement. We got into the car, the sounds of Michael's pleading fading into the background. The morning after we drove away from that sham of a funeral, I was up early, my mind a tangled mess of betrayal and disbelief. Despite the chaos, I knew my next step was clear. I needed a lawyer. Finding out where I stood legally seemed like the only way to start untangling this mess. By 9, I was sitting across from Mr. Carlson, a no-nonsense lawyer with a reputation for getting things done. Julia, let's start with the basics, he said, his voice steady, pulling out his glasses and a notepad. What exactly are we dealing with? I laid it all out, the lies, the 2 marriages, everything. When I mentioned the divorce papers Michael had supposedly filed, Mr. Carlson raised an eyebrow. Let's see those papers, if you have them. I handed over a copy. He scanned them, his frown deepening. This signature, you're saying it's not yours? Absolutely not. I never signed anything. I didn't even know he'd done this until yesterday. Mr. Carlson set the papers down, clasping his hands together. Well, that's fraud. Clear as day. We'll need to report this to the police, and we'll push for charges. As for your marriage, we can contest these documents easily. The legal gears started turning. I went from the lawyer's office straight to the police station. Explaining the situation to a sympathetic officer, I watched as she typed up the report, her keystrokes punctuating the heavy silence. Mrs. Thompson, we'll take it from here. We'll need to bring him in for questioning, she said, handing me a copy of the report. With the wheels of justice slowly grinding, I pushed forward with the divorce and sued Michael for financial compensation for the years I supported him and for the emotional wreckage he left behind. The parents of his second wife, stunned and hurt, filed their own lawsuit to claw back every penny they'd poured into Michael's lies. As the court cases dragged on, Michael's facade crumbled under the weight of evidence. He was convicted of fraud, his tears in court earning him no sympathy from the judge or anyone else he'd deceived. He ended up paying a hefty sum in compensation, scraped together from selling whatever assets he had left before he fled the country, chased by the shadows of his debts. With the money, I breathed new life into my cosmetology office, expanding it and hiring staff who shared my passion for beauty and care. It felt good, building something real and solid out of the ruins Michael left behind. Amid all this, life decided to throw me another curveball. During a routine doctor's visit, I found out I was pregnant. When I told Linda, her joy bubbled through the phone. Oh, Julia. This is wonderful news. You, me, and that little one on the way. We're going to be just fine. And Julia, there's something else. I've updated my will. After all this, I want to make sure you and your child are taken care of. The future looked uncertain, with plenty of challenges no doubt, but as I hung up the phone, a sense of peace settled over me. Life was moving forward, and for the first time in a long while, I was ready to face it head-on, bolstered by the bonds that no deception could ever break. I'm Heather, and I'm 8 years older than Madeline, my little sister. From the moment she was born, our parents made it clear that she was something extraordinary. "Look at those beautiful green eyes," they'd say. Or, "Have you ever seen such perfect golden curls?" Meanwhile, I stood in the corner with my plain brown hair and ordinary face, watching them fawn over her. Don't get me wrong, I loved my sister. How could I not? She was this tiny, perfect thing that needed constant attention and care. And since our parents both worked long hours to make ends meet, guess who became her second mother? That's right, me. "Heather, honey," Mom would say, "could you help Maddie with her homework? You're so good at math." Or, "Heather, dear, would you mind picking up your sister from school? We're both stuck at work." I remember one particular evening when I was 14 and Madeline was 6. I was helping her with her reading assignment while trying to finish my own mountain of homework. "I don't want to read anymore," Madeline whined, pushing the book away. "It's boring." "Come on, Maddie," I said, pulling the book back. "Just 3 more pages. Then we can play that game you like." She pouted but picked up the book again. "You're no fun, Heather." Sarah's big sister takes her to the park every day after school. "Well, Sarah's big sister doesn't have to work at the library after school," I replied, though it stung a bit. I was already juggling school, housework, and a part-time job at the local library to help with our family's expenses. That was our life, Madeline being Madeline, and me being, well, whatever everyone needed me to be. By 16, I was working 3 jobs, at a cafe in the morning, at the library after school, and doing online data entry at night. Also, we could afford Madeline's dance classes, her private tutoring, her beautiful clothes that made her the most popular girl in school. I kept telling myself it would get better. That one day, Madeline would understand and appreciate everything I did for her. That maybe, just maybe, our parents would look at me with the same pride they showed when they talked about her. But looking back now, I realize I was just telling myself what I needed to hear to keep going. When it came time to apply for college, I knew my options were limited. Not because of my grades, those were actually pretty good, despite working 3 jobs. I had even qualified for several scholarships at out-of-state universities. "You got accepted to Stanford?" Mom had asked when the letter arrived, her eyes widening for a moment before clouding over. "But honey, who would help Maddie with her college prep? And you know we can't afford that kind of tuition." I remember standing there in our kitchen, clutching that acceptance letter, watching as Mom's attention drifted to Madeline's latest art project on the fridge. I didn't mention that I'd been offered a partial scholarship. What was the point? So I enrolled at City College, kept my jobs at the cafe and library, and continued being Madeline's personal support system. During my freshman year, I'd rush from morning classes to work, then home to help Madeline with her homework. Some nights, I'd be up until 2 a.m. finishing my own assignments, only to wake up at 5 for my cafe shift. After graduation, I landed a decent job at an accounting firm and finally moved into my own apartment. It wasn't much, a tiny 1-bedroom with temperamental plumbing, but it was mine. I thought maybe now things would be different. Maybe now I could start focusing on my own life. Then came the phone call about Madeline's graduation dress. "Honey," Mom said, her voice taking on that familiar pleading tone, "you know how important this is to your sister. She needs to look perfect for her graduation." I felt a bitter laugh bubble up in my throat as I remembered my own graduation dress, a $30 clearance rack special that turned out to be identical to what Jenny Thompson wore. I'd spent the whole night trying to avoid being in the same photos as her. "How much does she want for the dress?" I asked, already reaching for my credit card. "Well, she found this gorgeous designer piece, it's only $800. I nearly choked on my coffee. $800? That was almost a month's rent. But I heard myself saying, "Okay, Mom, I'll transfer the money." Then came the real bombshell. Madeline had been accepted to Preston University, one of the most expensive private colleges in the state. And somehow, mysteriously, our parents had managed to save up a significant amount for her tuition. "We've been putting away money since she was born," Dad explained proudly during a family dinner. "Our little girl deserves the best education possible." I sat there, fork frozen halfway to my mouth, remembering all the student loans I was still paying off. All the scholarships I'd had to turn down. All the years I'd worked multiple jobs just to afford my public college tuition. They'd been saving for Madeline's education all along, But it didn't stop there. Within weeks of Madeline starting at Preston, the requests started rolling in. "Heather, sweetie," Mom called one evening. "Maddie needs help with her apartment rent. Just until she gets settled." Then it was textbooks. Then a laptop, because all the other students have MacBooks. Then a new iPhone, because her old one, the one I'd bought her last year, was embarrassing. Food money, clothes money. Every week brought a new expense, a new emergency, a new reason why Madeline needed my help. And through it all, not once did Madeline say thank you. Not once did she acknowledge the sacrifices I was making. To her, I was just the family ATM, endlessly dispensing whatever she needed without question or complaint. 3 years later, I was sitting at my kitchen table reviewing my monthly budget when my phone rang. Mom's voice was oddly excited on the other end. "Heather, you need to come over right now. Maddie has big news." I arrived at my parents' house to find Madeline practically bouncing off the walls, flashing a giant diamond ring. "I'm getting married," she squealed. "And I'm leaving college." The room went silent for a moment before I found my voice. "You're what?" "Oh, don't look so shocked, Heather," Madeline rolled her eyes. "College is boring anyway. Jason makes great money, and we're going to have the most amazing wedding." I felt like I was underwater. All those years of work, all that money, my money, just gone. I looked at my parents, waiting for them to say something, anything. But they just sat there beaming at Madeline like she'd just announced she'd cured cancer. "What about your degree?" I managed to ask. "We've all invested so much in." "Oh my God, Heather, you're such a buzzkill," Madeline interrupted. "This is why you're still single. You're always so practical and boring. Now, let me tell you about my wedding plans." For the next hour, I sat there in a daze as Madeline detailed her vision of a fairy tale wedding that would put all her friends' weddings to shame. The venue, the flowers, the dress, everything had to be perfect, which apparently meant expensive. Then came the bomb. "Honey," Dad said, clearing his throat. "We've taken out a loan, but it's not quite enough. And since you're part of the family, we need you to contribute," Mom finished. "It's your sister's special day, after all." I felt like I was having an out-of-body experience as I heard myself ask, "How much?" $20,000 should cover your share," Madeline said casually, as if she was asking to borrow $5 for coffee. I don't know what possessed me to say yes. Maybe it was habit. Maybe it was the way Mom's eyes welled up with tears. Maybe it was just easier than fighting. But I agreed, and the money left my account the next day. But they weren't done. "Actually, sweetie," Mom said during our next family dinner, "we'd been thinking, you could take out a loan too. Just a small one, to help with the extra expenses." For once in my life, something inside me snapped. "No," I said firmly. "Absolutely not. I'm saving for a mortgage. I need to think about my future too." "Since when did you become so selfish?" Madeline demanded, her perfect features twisting into an ugly scowl. I stood my ground, even as my hands shook under the table. "I've given you $20,000, Maddie. That's my limit." The silence that followed was deafening. Then Mom spoke up in that placating tone I knew so well. "Well, if you won't help financially anymore, the least you can do is help with the arrangements." I nodded, already feeling the familiar weight of responsibility settling back onto my shoulders. But something had changed. For the first time in my life, I'd said no to them. It was a small victory, but it felt monumental. The weeks turned into a nightmare. My phone buzzed constantly with Madeline's messages, each one demanding more money for some new, essential wedding detail. "Heather, I found the perfect flowers. They're only $3,000 for the arrangements. I need the money by tomorrow, or they'll give them to another bride. Oh my God, this band is amazing. They played at Chelsea's wedding, and I have to have them. They're asking for $5,000. Can you transfer the money tonight? The venue I wanted is available. But we need to put down a deposit today. It's just $8,000. You'll handle it, right?" I took a second job as a virtual assistant, working nights and weekends. My days became an endless blur of spreadsheets at my accounting job, wedding arrangements during my lunch break, when I actually got to take one, and then more hours in front of the computer at night. My coworker Jenny stopped me in the break room one day. "Heather, are you okay? You look different." I caught my reflection in the window and barely recognized myself. Dark circles under my eyes, clothes hanging loose where I'd lost weight, hair hastily pulled back because I couldn't remember the last time I'd had time to get it cut. "I'm fine," I said automatically. "Just busy with my sister's wedding." That night, I crawled into bed at 1 a.m., my eyes burning from staring at screens all day. Just as I was about to drift off, my phone lit up with another message from Madeline. "Just found the most amazing ice sculpture for the reception. Only $2,500. Need the money by morning, or they'll sell it to someone else." I turned off my phone and pressed my face into my pillow, trying to hold back tears of exhaustion. I'd already paid for the venue, the catering, the flowers, the band. How much more could there possibly be? The answer came a week later when Mom called. "Honey, we need to have a serious family discussion. Can you come over tonight?" I dragged myself to their house after work, wondering what else they could possibly want from me. I'd already emptied my savings account and maxed out my credit card. The only thing keeping me going was knowing it would all be over soon. When I walked in, I found Madeline sprawled on the couch, surrounded by travel magazines. Mom and Dad sat nearby, looking through a glossy catalog with her. "Oh, this resort is perfect," Madeline squealed, pointing to a page. "Look at those overwater bungalows. And they have private butlers for every suite." I stood in the doorway, watching as she flipped through the pages of what appeared to be a luxury travel brochure. My stomach clenched as I realized what was coming. "What exactly am I doing here?" I asked, my voice barely steady. "Why did you need me to come over?" Madeline looked up from her magazine with that sugary sweet smile I'd grown to dread. "Oh, we're just picking out your wedding gift to us." I blinked. "My, what?" "Your wedding gift," she repeated slowly, as if I was having trouble understanding basic English. "I've decided you're going to pay for our honeymoon in the Maldives." The room started spinning. I gripped the doorframe to steady myself. "Are you kidding me? After everything I've already paid for?" "Oh come on, Heather," Mom chimed in. "Don't be dramatic." "Dramatic?" My voice cracked. "I've already spent every penny I have on this wedding." "Well, it's not like you have anything else to spend it on," Madeline said with a shrug. "And it's only $24,000. Something inside me snapped. 29 years of being the good daughter, the supportive sister, the human ATM, it all came crashing down in that moment. "Only $24,000? I screamed. "Only? Do you have any idea what I've gone through for your precious wedding? Any idea at all?" "Heather, lower your voice," Dad warned. "No, I will not lower my voice. I'm done. I'm absolutely done with all of this." I was shaking now, years of buried resentment bubbling to the surface. "You're nothing but a spoiled, arrogant brat, Madeline. And I'm sick of dealing with your endless demands. I have my own life to think about." Madeline's face twisted into an ugly sneer. Your own life? What life? You're 29, Heather. An old maid. Have you looked in the mirror lately? No wonder you're single, you look terrible. What normal man would want you? The words hit like physical blows, but I stood my ground. I look terrible, because I'd been working 2 jobs, 7 days a week, to pay for your wedding. I haven't had a full night's sleep in months, because of your constant demands. You're just jealous, Madeline spat. Jealous because I'm getting married and you'll die alone. Jealous because I'm beautiful and successful and you're just, you. That was it. The dam broke completely. Successful? You dropped out of the college I helped pay for. Beautiful? Your soul is as ugly as they come. You've never worked a day in your life. You've never thanked me for anything I've done for you. You think the world owes you everything, and you know what? I'm done being part of your entitled little world. I turned and stormed out of the house, Madeline's voice following me. You're nothing but an envious witch. No wonder no one will ever marry you. Behind me, I could hear Mom and Dad joining in, hurling accusations and insults at my back. But for the first time in my life, I didn't turn around. I didn't apologize. I didn't give in. By the time I got home that night, my phone was exploding with messages. Mom had sent at least 30 texts, each one more vicious than the last. How dare you speak to your sister that way? After everything we've done for you. You're nothing but a selfish, ungrateful daughter. How could you ruin your sister's special day? I stared at the messages until the words blurred together, then did something I'd never done before, something that felt both terrifying and liberating. I opened my laptop and started sending emails. To the venue, I need to cancel the reservation and withdraw my payment. To the florist, please cancel the order for the wedding arrangements. To the catering company, I'm canceling the food service for the following date. To the band, unfortunately, I need to withdraw my booking. One by one, I systematically undid everything I'd arranged for Madeline's wedding. My hands were shaking, but my mind was clear. The wedding was only 2 weeks away, but I didn't care anymore. With each cancellation, I felt a little lighter. Then all hell broke loose. My phone started ringing nonstop. When I blocked Mom's number, she started calling from Dad's phone. When I blocked that, she used their landline. Messages flooded in from every possible platform: email, Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp. I blocked them all. Heather, please call your Aunt Susan. Why won't you answer Uncle Jim's calls? Your cousin Rachel is very upset with you. How could you do this to your own sister? The calls came from everywhere: distant relatives I hadn't spoken to in years, family friends I barely knew, even Madeline's future in-laws. I stopped answering my phone altogether. Then came the physical visits. I was trying to get some sleep when I heard the shouting from below my window. Heather, get down here right now. It was Mom's voice, shrill and angry. You better fix this, you selfish witch. That was Madeline. They stood there for hours, alternating between angry demands and tearful pleas. I turned up my TV to drown them out. The next morning, I spoke to Jorge, our building's concierge. Please don't let them in, I said quietly. I don't care what they say, they're not welcome here. Jorge, who had witnessed their behavior the night before, nodded sympathetically. Don't worry, Ms. Robertson. I'll take care of it. A week later, my friend Kelly called. Have you heard what happened? She asked cautiously. Your parents had to take out another emergency loan to cover everything you canceled. None of the vendors would do it on such short notice without charging premium rates. They ended up paying almost double for everything. I sat there in silence, letting that sink in. Part of me felt guilty, the part that had been programmed since childhood to take care of everything, to make everything okay for everyone else. But a stronger part of me, the part that had finally found its voice, knew I had done the right thing. A month after the drama, I was scrolling through Instagram when I saw them, Madeline's wedding photos. I hadn't meant to look, but a mutual friend had liked them, and there they were. The lavish wedding my sister had demanded had turned into something quite different. Instead of the five-star hotel venue, they'd used our parents' backyard. The $3,000 flower arrangements had been replaced with simple grocery store bouquets. The expensive band was nowhere to be seen, just a laptop and speakers on a folding table. Madeline was wearing her dream dress, looking as beautiful as ever, but something was off. In every photo, her smile seemed forced, her eyes tight with disappointment. No honeymoon photos followed, the Maldives dream had died with the rest of her grand plans. I closed Instagram and tried to get on with my life. For the first time in years, I was focusing on myself, sleeping regular hours, eating proper meals, even starting to look like myself again. Then, 3 months after the wedding, my phone rang. It was Dad. Heather, his voice sounded tired, older somehow. We need to talk. Can you come over? Something in his tone made me agree. When I arrived at my parents' house, it felt different. Mom and Dad sat on the couch, looking deflated. Dad spoke first. Madeline's getting a divorce. The words hung in the air like smoke. I waited. She and Jason, Mom's voice cracked. They've been fighting since the wedding. He keeps complaining about how cheap everything was, how embarrassing it was that they couldn't even have a proper band. He's furious about the cancelled honeymoon. The thing is, Dad continued, staring at his hands, we took out 2 loans for that wedding. Even the scaled-down version, we're in pretty deep, Heather. I knew what was coming before they said it. We were hoping. Mom began. No, I said quietly, but firmly. But Heather, we're your parents. And I'm your daughter. The one you never saved money for. The one who worked 3 jobs to put herself through college. The one who emptied her savings account for a wedding that shouldn't have happened in the first place. They sat in stunned silence. We realize now that we were partially wrong, Dad said carefully. The way we treated you. I stood up, smoothing my skirt. Partially wrong? You've been wrong about everything. About me, about Madeline, about money, about life. Maybe someday you'll realize just how wrong you've been. But until then, I wish you luck with those loans. As I drove away, I caught a glimpse of my parents in the rearview mirror, standing in their doorway looking lost and small. For the first time, I didn't turn back. Life has a funny way of showing you who people really are. 6 months after Madeline's divorce, I was having coffee with Kelly when she hesitated, stirring her latte with unusual concentration. Have you heard about Madeline? She asked carefully. I shook my head. After the loan conversation with my parents, I'd maintained my distance, focusing on rebuilding my life. She moved back in with your parents, Kelly continued. She's not working, says she's too traumatized by the divorce to hold a job. But she's been dating, a lot. Different guy every week, from what I hear. And your parents? Let me guess, I interrupted. They're supporting her completely. Kelly nodded. Paying for everything, her car, her clothes, her nights out. Even after those wedding loans. I wasn't surprised. Some patterns never change. Weeks turned into months. I quit my second job, finally able to focus on my primary career. For the first time in years, I started taking care of myself. I joined a yoga class, got regular haircuts, bought clothes that weren't just for work. People started commenting on how different I looked. Then came the call I never expected. It was Mom, her voice small and unfamiliar. Heather, I need to tell you something. I owe you an apology. I sat down, bracing myself. Madeline, she met someone. A wealthy businessman. Mom's voice cracked. She left with him yesterday. We don't know where. But before she left, she maxed out all our credit cards. Every single one. The silence stretched between us. Mom, I started, but she interrupted. No, please let me finish. Your father and I are in terrible debt now. But we're not calling to ask for money. We'll figure it out ourselves. We should have done that a long time ago. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. For everything. It wasn't a perfect apology. It didn't erase years of favoritism and manipulation. But it was something. These days, I don't know where Madeline is. Sometimes I see traces of her on social media, a tagged photo here, a location check-in there, but she's like a ghost, floating from place to place, person to person. My parents and I exchange brief messages on holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy Birthday, Happy New Year. It's superficial, but it's all I can manage right now. But here's the thing about finally breaking free from toxic patterns: life has a way of filling the empty spaces with something better. 3 months ago, I met James at a bookstore coffee shop. He was reading my favorite novel, and we started talking. He's kind, successful in his own right, and most importantly, he sees me, really sees me. Last night, I was cleaning out some old boxes and found a photo of Madeline and me as children. She was 5, I was 13, and we were both smiling at the camera, unaware of everything that lay ahead. I thought about keeping it, but instead, I put it back in the box. Some memories are better left in the past. As I write this, sitting in my favorite coffee shop with James across from me, working on his laptop and occasionally glancing up to smile at me, I realize something profound. Sometimes the happy ending isn't about getting everything you thought you wanted. Sometimes it's about finally letting go of what was holding you back all along. At the ripe age of 71, you'd reckon I'd settled into a quiet life, what with George constantly off rubbing elbows with the bigwigs and me, Margaret, keeping the home fires burning. Our nest, a tidy spread in a leafy suburb, was just the two of us now, save for the occasional flutter when our son, Michael, his wife, Laura, and our darling granddaughter, Emily, flew in from the city. George's gig with the governor meant he was more often out than in, leaving me to my devices, which lately meant more charity drives than I could count on both hands. Proud? You bet. Lonely? Sometimes, but you don't get to my age without learning a trick or two about keeping busy. Then came the curveball. Michael rang one evening, the excitement in his voice so thick you could slice it. Mom, Dad, we're doing it. We're buying a farm. Can you believe it? A farm? I echoed, my voice flat. This was news, all right. News that had me wondering if city life had finally addled their brains. Yeah, it's happening. We're moving out there, starting fresh. It's going to be great for Emily, Michael explained, his words tumbling out faster than I could catch them. George, ever the rock, just nodded along, throwing an A. That's quite the leap, son. But if you're sure, we've got your back. I kept my peace, biting my tongue hard enough to taste blood. A farm, of all things. But what was said. We helped them with the deposit, not without a hefty dose of skepticism on my part. Since they'd moved, my phone's been buzzing nonstop with updates. Pictures of chickens, endless fields, and Emily, always Emily, grinning ear to ear, her cheeks pink with country air. Laura sends snapshots of their latest harvest, her texts bubbling with pride. Look at what we've grown, Margaret. Can't wait for you to see it all. And George, bless him, laps it up, showing off the photos at his fancy dinners, bragging about our little farmers to anyone within earshot. Me? I'm more grounded. That's all well and good, I'd say. But photos don't plow the fields. I hadn't set foot on their farm yet. Between the charity events and keeping our own home from falling into disarray, there just hadn't been time. But that didn't stop the nightly calls. Mom, you should see the place now. It's incredible, Michael would start, his voice a mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. I'm sure it is, I'd reply, keeping it short, not wanting to dampen his spirit with my reservations. George, catching me after one such call, laid it out plain. Margaret, we should visit. See it for ourselves. It's important to Michael. I sighed, the weight of his words settling on my shoulders. All right, but I'm not sugarcoating my thoughts. If they're in over their heads, they need to hear it. Fair enough, George agreed, his hand finding mine, a silent promise of solidarity. So, we marked the calendar, a visit to the farm looming over us like a storm cloud. I couldn't shake the feeling that what awaited us was more than just fresh produce and country air. One afternoon, I started feeling a bit off. Nothing specific, just not my usual self. George noticed right away. "Margaret, you're looking a bit pale. Maybe we should get you checked out," he said, his brow furrowed with worry. I brushed off his concern with a wave of my hand. "It's probably just the change in weather. I'll be fine." But George wouldn't have any of it. The next thing I knew, we were sitting in the doctor's office, waiting for some answers. The doctor, a young man with a reassuring smile, told us it wasn't anything serious, but I needed to avoid being alone for long stretches and should spend more time outdoors. "Fresh air and company will do you good," he advised. The timing couldn't have been worse. George was due to leave on one of his lengthy business trips. He looked at me, his mind racing for solutions. "What about staying with Michael and Laura on the farm? It's peaceful, and you won't be alone." The farm. Just the thought of it made me uneasy, though I couldn't pinpoint why. "I'm not sure that's a good idea," I muttered, more to myself than to George. But George, ever the problem solver, was persistent. "It's perfect. Fresh air, family, and you won't be by yourself. I'll talk to Michael." I had a long heart-to-heart with Michael over the phone. It wasn't easy. "Mom, are you sure about this? We'd love to have you, but we know how much you value your space and routine," he said, sounding hesitant. "It's not my first choice, Michael, but your father thinks it's a good idea. And the doctor did say I should be around family and outdoors more," I replied, trying to sound more convinced than I felt. Laura chimed in, her voice bright but cautious. "We can make it work, Margaret. It'll be nice having you with us. Emily will be thrilled." Their willingness to have me over tipped the scales. Despite my reservations, I agreed. "All right, I'll give it a try. But let's make one thing clear, I'm not there to be waited on hand and foot. I'll help out where I can." Packing my bags felt strange, like I was heading off to an uncertain adventure rather than my son's home. George drove me to the farm, trying to keep the mood light. "You'll see, it'll be good for you. And before you know it, I'll be back, and we'll laugh about how worried we were." The farm was buzzing with life the day I arrived, but nobody was more excited to see me than my little granddaughter, Emily. She was all smiles and hugs, her energy infectious. We spent our days roaming the fields, reading stories under the shade of an old oak tree, and playing games that left us both laughing until our sides hurt. Emily clung to me like a shadow, her affection clear as day. It was a grandmother's dream come true, but not everyone was basking in the warmth of our bond. Laura, my daughter-in-law, wasn't too pleased with how things were turning out. It was like a cloud had settled over the house, and you could cut the tension with a knife. Every time Emily chose to spend time with me over helping her mom with chores, Laura's frown deepened, her displeasure barely concealed. Feeling the strain, I figured I'd lend a hand around the house, hoping to ease some of the tension. "Laura, let me help you with dinner tonight," I offered one afternoon, trying to bridge the gap between us. Laura looked at me, her expression a mix of surprise and something else I couldn't quite place. "Sure, if you think you can handle it. Just don't mess up my kitchen," she replied, her tone laced with a hint of sarcasm. I brushed off her comment and got to work, doing my best to prepare a meal that would bring some semblance of peace to the household. I even took to tidying up around the house, hoping my efforts would lighten her load and, in turn, her mood. But it seemed my attempts were met with more mockery than appreciation. "Wow, look at you, playing the domestic goddess. What's next, gonna take over the farm chores too?" Laura joked one evening as I set the table, her laughter not quite reaching her eyes. I forced a smile, choosing to keep the peace. "Just trying to help out where I can, Laura. No need for any jabs." Her smile faltered, and for a moment, I thought I saw a flicker of guilt. "Yeah, well, just don't overdo it. Wouldn't want you wearing yourself out," she said, her voice with a coolness that left me feeling more like an outsider than part of the family. Despite the chill in the air, Emily remained my sunshine, her love unwavering. But it was clear that my presence had stirred up more than just familial joy. The dynamics in the house had shifted, and I found myself treading a fine line between helping out and stepping on toes. It was a delicate dance, one I wasn't sure I knew the steps to. As the days passed, the balance I sought remained elusive, the warmth of my granddaughter's love overshadowed by the growing coldness from Laura. It was a situation I had hoped to avoid, but there I was, caught in the middle of familial love and rivalry, wondering if my attempt to smooth things over was doing more harm than good. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the farm as I sat quietly on the porch, lost in thought. My days here, initially filled with the simple joys of spending time with Emily, had taken an unexpected turn. Laura approached, her footsteps firm and purposeful. I braced myself for what I sensed was more than a casual conversation. "Margaret, we need to talk," Laura began, her tone firm, leaving no room for the usual pleasantries. She took a seat opposite me, her posture rigid. "Of course, Laura. What's on your mind?" I asked, trying to keep my voice even, despite the tension. "It's about the work around here, and your contribution," she said, her eyes not quite meeting mine. "You've been great with Emily, and we appreciate that, but there's a lot more to be done. This isn't a holiday. We're running a farm here." I felt a pang of hurt. "I understand that, Laura. I've been trying to help out as much as I can." "You know I haven't been feeling well," I replied, my voice tinged with a mix of frustration and disappointment. Laura's response was swift and sharp. "Feeling unwell? We all have our burdens, Margaret. But we still need to do our part. It's not fair to the rest of us if you're not contributing." Her words stung, and I struggled to find a response. Before I could gather my thoughts, Michael joined us, his expression serious. "Mom, Laura's right. We're all stretched thin as it is. We were hoping you'd understand the situation and help out more," Michael added, siding with Laura. I looked from Laura to Michael, feeling a deep sense of betrayal. I thought I was helping by taking care of Emily and assisting where I could. "I didn't realize my efforts were seen as insufficient," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. The conversation took an even more disheartening turn when Laura mentioned money. "Look, Margaret, the reality is that hosting an extra person costs money. We hadn't planned for this, and frankly, we need you to contribute financially for your stay here." I was dumbfounded. Contribute financially? I came here to be with family, not to be charged for my visit. I don't have any money with me. George handles our finances, I explained, feeling a mix of anger and disbelief. Michael chimed in, his tone apologetic yet firm. "We're not trying to be harsh, Mom, but the farm isn't doing as well as we'd hoped. We're just asking for a little help to cover the extra expenses. It's only fair." The word fair echoed in my mind. Fair? Was it fair to ask me, still not fully recovered and invited as family, to pay for my presence? Seeing my hesitation, Laura offered a cold compromise. "If money is an issue, there are plenty of chores that need doing. You can earn your keep that way. It's only fair, considering." The conversation left me reeling. My son and daughter-in-law's demands felt like a slap in the face, a harsh reminder that my place in this family was not as secure as I had thought. After Laura laid her demands on me, I stood there, feeling a mix of disbelief and anger boiling inside. "I can't believe what I'm hearing," I said, my voice trembling not just from age, but from pure outrage. "I came here to be with family, not to be extorted. I'm leaving, first thing tomorrow." Laura's reaction was swift and cold, her laugh sharp enough to cut through the tense air. "Leaving, are you? And let the whole world know how the governor's right-hand man's family is falling apart? How his wife can't even stand to be with her own son and granddaughter? That should make for a juicy story, don't you think?" Her words hit me like a slap. This wasn't just a disagreement, it was outright blackmail. "You wouldn't dare," I gasped, the threat hanging heavy between us. "Oh, but I would. Think about it, Margaret. Your precious reputation and George's, all dragged through the mud. Is that what you want?" Laura's eyes were alight with a dangerous mix of determination and anger. I turned to Michael, desperately hoping for some semblance of support, but his stance was clear. "Mom, you know how hard things have been for us. We just need a bit more help, that's all. Laura's right, we can't afford any scandals." I was stunned. My own son, my flesh and blood, siding with this blackmail. "So, you're okay with this? Threatening your own mother?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper, laden with a mix of heartache and disbelief. Michael looked away, his discomfort evident but his resolve unwavering. "It's not like that, Mom. But we have to think about what's best for the family. And right now, we need to stick together. That means doing what's necessary." The realization hit me hard. My own family was willing to use me, to threaten me, to keep me in line. The love and warmth I thought bound us were conditional, easily overshadowed by fear and desperation. That night, as I lay in a bed that felt more like a prison than a haven, my mind raced. The threat to George's reputation, the betrayal by my own son, it was all too much. But leaving now would only give Laura what she wanted, ammunition to use against us. By morning, my resolve had hardened. I wouldn't let Laura's threats dictate my actions, but neither could I abandon my family, no matter how twisted the situation had become. "I'll stay," I declared over breakfast, my voice firm. "But not because of your threats, Laura. Because this family, however broken, is still my family." Laura's smirk said it all, she thought she had won. But for me, this wasn't about winning or losing anymore. It was about protecting what little was left of our family's dignity, even if it meant enduring more of this bitter situation. The days that followed were some of the hardest of my life. I threw myself into the farm work, not just to prove Laura wrong, but to find some semblance of peace in the physical labor. It was a way to distance myself from the emotional turmoil, to turn my back on the blackmail and bitterness that had tainted my relationship with my son and his wife. But with every passing day, a part of me mourned the loss of what I had once believed my family to be. The realization that love and respect could be so easily overshadowed by desperation and greed was a bitter pill to swallow. And as I worked alongside those who had threatened and betrayed me, I couldn't help but wonder if the bonds of family could ever truly be mended. After Laura realized her threats had me cornered, she didn't hold back anymore. It was like living with a drill sergeant. "Margaret, the kitchen won't clean itself, and those clothes won't wash themselves either." She'd bark orders as if I were a new recruit rather than family. Days turned into a cycle of endless chores. My only respite was time spent with Emily, my granddaughter, whose innocence and love were like a beacon of light in a steadily darkening world. But even those moments were fleeting, overshadowed by Laura's relentless demands. Gone were the days of self-care and leisurely shopping trips. My reflection became a stranger, one who looked worn and much older than her years. Fatigue became my constant companion, dragging me down further each day. One evening, mustering the little energy I had left, I tried to reason with Michael. "I can't keep up with this pace. It's too much. I'm not well," I pleaded, hoping for a sliver of understanding. But empathy was in short supply. "Mom, we're all tired. Laura's just making sure we keep the house running. Try to see it from our side." Michael's response was dismissive, his patience thin. My health continued to spiral. Eating became a chore, and every step was a battle. Laura's realization that her free labor was now incapable of even the most basic tasks finally prompted action, but not out of concern. Fear of accountability for their treatment of me led them to rush me to the clinic when I could barely stand. The doctor's assessment was grim but not surprising. "She needs to be admitted immediately. Her condition is serious," he announced after a thorough examination. Laura's reaction was telling. "Admitted? But we need her at home. Can't she just get some medicine and rest there?" Her concern wasn't for my well-being but for the loss of a helping hand. Michael, finally sensing the gravity of the situation, interjected. "Laura, this is serious. Mom's health comes first." As I lay in the hospital bed, the weight of my situation sank in. Removed from the farm's oppressive atmosphere, I realized how much I had endured and at what cost. Laura's dissatisfaction with my hospitalization, Michael's belated defense, and my own battered health painted a clear picture of how far things had gone awry. In that hospital room, decisions were made. I couldn't return to the farm, not after everything. It was a moment of clarity bought at a high price, a realization that sometimes, the cost of staying is far greater than the price of walking away. George walked into the hospital room, his face a mix of concern and shock. "What happened to you?" he asked, barely recognizing the frail figure before him. I tried to muster a smile, but it was hard. "It's been tough, George. The farm, it wasn't what we thought." George turned to Michael, his voice hard. "Explain, now." Michael shuffled his feet, looking anywhere but at his father. "Dad, we were struggling. The farm's a mess. We thought Mom could help, but we didn't force her, I swear." George's gaze then fell on Laura, who had been standing quietly by the door, her daughter in tow. The look in his eyes was enough to send her scurrying out of the room, murmuring something about needing to check on something. Turning back to Michael, George's anger was palpable. "Not force her? She's in the hospital, Michael. And I hear you've been asking her for money on top of everything?" Michael's voice trembled. "Dad, we just thought since Mom was staying with us, she could help out a bit more, financially." George cut him off. "Help out? I've been sending money to cover her expenses, and then some. Over $5,000, Michael. Where did that money go?" I was stunned. "You did?" "George, I had no idea." George's face softened as he looked at me. "Of course, I did. I wanted to make sure you were taken care of." He then faced Michael again, his decision clear. "I'm cutting off the financial support. And I want a refund for the money I sent. This was a mistake." Michael looked like he wanted to argue, but one look at his father's face, and he knew it was futile. "I understand, Dad." George turned back to me, taking my hands gently in his. "I'm so sorry, love. This was my idea, thinking it would be good for you. I didn't know it would turn out like this." I could see the pain in his eyes, the guilt he felt for putting me in this situation. "It's not your fault, George. You couldn't have known." He leaned down, kissing my hands, a gesture of love and apology. "We'll get you out of here soon. Back home, where you belong." His words, his actions, they meant the world to me. Despite everything, George's love was unwavering. "I love you, George. We'll get through this. Together." As George and I talked about the future, about going home and leaving the farm behind, I realized that this ordeal had brought us even closer. The hardship had been a test, one that we were passing together. My heart was full, knowing that no matter what, George stood by me, just as I would always stand by him. Recovery was neither swift nor easy, but day by day, I felt my strength returning. The ordeal at the farm, with its trials and tribulations, gradually receded into the background, becoming a distant, albeit painful, memory. Home never felt so welcoming, its familiar walls a sanctuary from the storm I had weathered. It was during one of these quiet mornings, the sunlight streaming through the window, that Michael came to visit. The tension between us was palpable, a silent testament to the rift that had formed. "Mom, I don't even know where to start," Michael began, breaking the silence with a voice heavy with remorse. "Start with the truth, Michael. It's a good place as any," I replied, setting my cup down, bracing myself for what was to come. He sighed, a deep, soulful sound that spoke volumes. "The farm, it's gone. We sold it, but even that wasn't enough to cover the debts. And Laura, she left. Said she couldn't handle it, the poverty, the struggles. She left Emily and me. The news of the farm didn't surprise me, but Laura's departure did. Despite everything, I hadn't expected her to abandon her family. "And Emily?" I asked, my heart aching for my granddaughter. "She's with me. I got a job, a good one, at a trading company. We're getting by, Mom. It's not easy, but we're managing," he explained, and for the first time in a long while, I saw the old Michael in him. "Michael, I won't pretend to understand all your choices, but know this, Emily will always have a home with me. And you, we have a lot to work through." "Now I can't forgive you," I said. He nodded, relief and gratitude mingling in his expression. "Thank you, Mom. That means more than you know." One day, out of the blue, Laura called. "I need money to come and see Emily. You can spare some, can't you?" Her voice, once so commanding, now carried a hint of desperation. The audacity of her request took me aback. "You think you can just walk back into her life after abandoning her?" "No, Laura. Emily doesn't need a mother like you." That was the last I heard from her. As for me, life has settled into a comfortable pace. My days are filled with little joys and the company of those I love. Emily's visits are the highlight of my weeks, her laughter a constant reminder of the resilience of the human spirit. Despite the trials, I've found contentment. The path wasn't easy, and the scars remain, but looking at Emily, I'm reminded of the hope that tomorrow holds. Forgiveness for Michael is a bridge yet to be crossed, but with time, perhaps we'll get there. For now, I cherish the peace and satisfaction of a life rebuilt, a testament to the enduring strength we possess within. Growing up, we weren't rich, but we were happy. I'm Tiffany, the oldest of 3 sisters in our family. My sister Marcy came after me, and then there was Lana, the baby of the family. Dad worked as a van driver, and Mom stayed home to take care of us. Times were tight, but somehow we managed. Then came that awful day when I was 10. I still remember every detail, the police officers at our door, Mom's face crumbling as they told her about the accident. Dad's van had crashed, and just like that, he was gone. Our whole world changed in an instant. "I need to find a job," Mom said through her tears that night, after she thought we were asleep. I stood in the hallway, listening to her sob. The next week, she started working at the local hardware store as a saleswoman. It wasn't much, but it was all she could find on such short notice. From that day forward, I had to step up. Being the oldest meant taking on responsibilities I never thought I'd have at 10 years old. While Mom worked long hours at the store, I learned to cook simple meals, help my sisters with homework, and keep the house running. But the bills kept piling up. By the time I turned 16, it was clear we needed more income. I found a part-time job at a local cafe, working after school and on weekends. The pay wasn't great, but every dollar counted. It was during one of our rare family dinners when Mom broke the news about college. She looked at each of us, her face tired and worn. "Girls, I need to be honest with you. I won't be able to pay for your college tuition. You'll have to figure something out on your own." That announcement hit us hard, but it also lit a fire under me. I started studying like my life depended on it, because in a way, it did. Every free moment between work shifts and household chores, I had my nose in a book. My grades had to be perfect, there was no other option. The hard work paid off when I got the letter, a full scholarship to college. I cried when I read it, and for once, they were happy tears. Mom hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. Things worked out differently for my sisters. Marcy, being the determined person she is, took out student loans. She managed to graduate, but I knew those loans would hang over her head for years to come. Lana took a different path entirely. When she turned 18, she went straight into the workforce. Getting into college on a full scholarship was just the beginning. I quickly learned that books and tuition weren't the only expenses I had to worry about. I shared a small apartment with 2 other students, Sarah and Rachel, to split the rent 3 ways. "How do you manage to work so much and still keep your grades up?" Sarah would ask, watching me rush out for another shift at the campus coffee shop. The truth was, I barely slept. Between classes, studying, and working every spare hour I could, my days were packed. But I didn't have a choice, the rent had to be paid, and my family still needed help back home. "Mom, I'm sending you some money for the bills," I'd say during our weekly phone calls, already knowing her response. "Tiffany, honey, you should keep it for yourself," she'd protest, but I could hear the relief in her voice. Every month, I'd send whatever I could spare, sometimes leaving myself with just enough for ramen noodles and coffee. After graduation, things started looking up. I landed a job at a marketing firm, and that's where I met David. He started as the guy who always seemed to be getting coffee at the same time as me in the break room. Even with a good job and a growing relationship with David, I never stopped helping my family. Every time my sisters called with money troubles, I'd send them what I could, usually $200 or $300. Marcy needed help with car repairs, Lana had unexpected medical bills, and Mom's house always seemed to need fixing. "You're an angel, Tiff," Marcy would say. "I'll pay you back as soon as I can." We both knew that would never happen, but I didn't mind. I was finally in a position to help, and it felt good. When David proposed on my 25th birthday, everything felt perfect. We had a small wedding, nothing fancy, but it was exactly what we wanted. That's when the real miracle happened. "Babe, you need to see this apartment," David called me one day. "The owner needs to sell immediately, and my parents offered to help with the down payment." It seemed too good to be true, a 2-bedroom apartment in the city at an incredible discount. The owner was moving overseas and needed to sell quickly. With David's parents' help, we managed to buy it. I was so excited to share the news with my family. I thought they'd be happy for us, but I couldn't have been more wrong. "Must be nice," Marcy said during our next family dinner, pushing food around her plate. "Some people just have everything handed to them." "Yeah," Lana chimed in. "We're still stuck renting, and we've been working just as hard." What hurt the most was Mom's reaction. Instead of defending me, she nodded along. "The girls do have a point, Tiffany. They could use their own places too." I sat there, stunned into silence. All those years of helping them, sending money, supporting them however I could, it felt like none of it mattered. They didn't see the scholarships I'd worked for, the long hours I'd put in, or the sacrifices I'd made. They only saw what they didn't have. Some habits die hard. Ever since college, I'd had this little tradition of buying lottery tickets before the holidays. It started during my freshman year, when I was particularly broke and dreaming of being able to buy real Christmas presents for my family instead of the handmade ones I'd been giving them. This Christmas was no different. I stopped at my usual store on my way home from work, bought my ticket, and stuck it in my purse like I'd done countless times before. I didn't even check the numbers until 3 days after the drawing. I was sitting at our kitchen table, sipping coffee and absently scrolling through the lottery website on my phone. Then I saw the numbers. I checked them again. And again. My hands started shaking so badly I nearly spilled my coffee. "David," I screamed. "David, come here." He came running from the bedroom, still in his pajamas. "What's wrong? Are you okay?" I couldn't speak. I just handed him my phone and the ticket. He looked back and forth between them several times, his eyes getting wider each time. "Holy shit," he whispered. "Tiff, this is $400,000. We sat in stunned silence for what felt like hours. Finally, David spoke again. "We should celebrate. Should we call your family? Your mom would." "No," the word came out sharper than I intended. I felt tears welling up in my eyes. "We can't tell them. If they find out, they'll want it all. They already resent me for having an apartment. Can you imagine what they'd say about this?" A twinge of guilt hit me as I thought about Marcy still paying off her student loans. Maybe I should help her with that? But then I remembered her bitter comments about our apartment, and Mom taking her side. No, if I gave them anything, it would never be enough. They'd keep asking for more until there was nothing left. "What do you want to do with it?" David asked gently, pulling me back from my thoughts. I wiped my eyes and took a deep breath. "I want to buy a house. A real house, outside the city. Something with a yard where our kids could play someday." "But you have to promise me something," I said, gripping his hand tightly. "You can't tell anyone about the money. Not your parents, not your friends, and especially not my family. If they find out." "They won't," he assured me. "Not from me." "But what will we tell them about the house?" "We'll figure something out. A mortgage, help from your parents, anything but the truth." I know it sounds terrible, keeping the secret from them, but I trailed off, unable to finish. There was no way around it. I had to tell my family about the house. Living in the same city meant they'd find out eventually, and I wanted to control how they got the news. So I invited everyone over for dinner one evening, nervous about their reaction. "We've bought a house," I announced after dessert, trying to sound casual. "It's a nice place in the countryside, about 30 minutes from here." The silence that followed was deafening. Mom was the first to speak. "How on earth did you afford a house?" I stuck to the story David and I had prepared. "We got a mortgage, and David's parents helped with the down payment. The market was good, and we found a great deal." "Must be nice having in-laws with money," Marcy muttered, but I pretended not to hear. "Actually," I continued, forcing a smile, "I wanted to tell you all that you're welcome to use it whenever you want, at least until we move there permanently. It's a great place for weekend getaways." That changed their tune immediately. Suddenly, everyone wanted details about the house, the property, the number of bedrooms. Lana was already planning a weekend trip with her boyfriend. What followed was a parade of family members cycling through our country house. Every weekend, someone wanted to use it. Lana and her boyfriend became regular visitors. Then Lana got engaged, and she had another request. "Tiff," she called me one day, "would it be okay if we spent our honeymoon at the house? We're trying to save money, and it would be perfect." How could I say no to my baby sister's honeymoon? So of course, they spent a week there after their small wedding. It made me happy to see them enjoying the house, even if they didn't know the truth about how we got it. The problems started gradually. First, it was the mess they'd leave behind, nothing major, just dishes in the sink or wet towels on the bathroom floor. Then it was the constant requests for the keys, sometimes with barely any notice. "Hey, can we get the keys for tonight? Mark's parents are in town," Marcy would text, expecting an immediate response. I always said yes. It was easier than dealing with the guilt trips that would follow if I refused. David started to get annoyed, but I assured him it was temporary. Once we moved in permanently, things would change. Then came the Wednesday that showed me the unpleasant side of my family. I decided to drive out to the house to do some cleaning and check on things. As I pulled up the driveway, I noticed a car I recognized, Marcy's blue sedan. That was strange. She hadn't asked for the keys this week. I walked up to the front door and used my key to open it. The sound of the TV came from the living room, along with Marcy's laugh and her husband's voice. They both looked up, startled to see me standing there. "Oh, hey Tiff," Marcy said, trying to sound casual. "We just needed to get away for a day." "How did you get in?" I asked, though I already had a sinking feeling I knew the answer. Marcy shrugged, as if it were no big deal. "I had copies of the keys made a while back. It was just easier than bothering you every time we wanted to come out here." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. "You made copies of my keys without asking me? I need those copies, now." "Fine," she huffed, digging in her purse. "Here. But I don't see why you're being so uptight about this. It's not like we've damaged anything." I took the keys from her, trying to keep my hand steady. It wasn't about damage. It was about trust, about boundaries, about respect. But looking at my sister's defensive expression, I knew she wouldn't understand that. A year passed, and I had news I couldn't wait to share. I was pregnant. David and I decided to tell everyone at our monthly family dinner. I imagined happy faces, hugs, maybe even some tears of joy. I couldn't have been more wrong. Everyone, I said, standing up after the main course, holding David's hand for support. We have some exciting news. We're having a baby. There was a moment of silence, then Mom smiled weakly. That's wonderful, dear. But before anyone could say anything else, Lana cut in. Wait, does this mean you're moving to the house permanently? Yes, I said, my smile faltering slightly. We think it would be better for the baby to grow up there, with all that fresh air and space. But where are we supposed to go for weekends now? Lana interrupted. That house is our getaway spot. I stared at my sister in disbelief. Had she even heard what I'd said? I was going to have a baby, her niece or nephew, and all she cared about was losing her free vacation house? The rest of dinner was tense. No one asked about the baby, about when I was due, or how I was feeling. Instead, there were whispered conversations about the house, about arrangements that would need to change. We moved to the house a few weeks later. My sister still visited, but things were different. I kept the visits shorter, making it clear they couldn't stay overnight anymore. This was our home now, not their vacation spot. Then came the night that changed everything. Marcy and her husband had come over for dinner. David and I had set up a nice spread on the back patio, and after dinner, the men were sharing a bottle of cognac while Marcy and I cleared the dishes. I was in the kitchen when I heard it, David's voice, loose from the cognac, saying words that made my blood run cold. You know, we really lucked out with that lottery win. $400,000. Can you believe it? The sound of breaking glass made me run to the patio. Marcy was standing there, a shattered wine glass at her feet, staring at me with a look I'd never seen before. Lottery win, she said, her voice trembling. You won the lottery? David's face went pale as he realized what he'd done. I opened my mouth to speak, but Marcy cut me off. You lying bitch, she screamed. All this time you've had money. A gorgeous house, while we're all struggling to pay rent. Marcy, please, I started, but she was beyond reasoning. You should have shared it with us, she shouted. We're your sisters. You've been living in luxury while I'm still paying off my student loans. It was my ticket, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. My money. Your money? She laughed bitterly. You know what you should do? Sell that apartment in the city and split the money between me and Lana. It's the least you could do after lying to us for so long. I'm not selling anything, I said firmly. I'm sorry you're upset, but this money was mine to spend how I chose. Marcy's face contorted with rage. We'll see about that. I'll take you to court, and you'll have to give us what we deserve. You think you can just keep all this for yourself? We'll see what a judge has to say about that. She grabbed her purse and stormed toward the door, her husband trailing behind her looking uncomfortable. As she reached the doorway, she turned back to me. You're going to regret this, she spat. You're going to regret being so selfish. I thought things couldn't get worse after Marcy stormed out that night. I was wrong. The next morning, my phone started ringing at 7 a.m. It was Mom. How could you do this to us? She demanded, her voice trembling with anger. Marcy told me everything. Your own family, Tiffany. We've struggled all these years while you sat on a fortune? Mom, please listen, I tried to explain, but she cut me off. No, you listen. After everything I've done for you, everything I sacrificed? You owe us. The calls kept coming. If I didn't answer, they'd leave voicemails. When I blocked their numbers, they started emailing. Text messages flooded my phone day and night. I tried to stay calm, reminding myself that stress wasn't good for the baby. But it was impossible to ignore the constant barrage of guilt and threats. Share the money or we'll see you in court, Marcy threatened in another message. I thought they were bluffing about the lawsuit. Then the papers arrived. Mrs. Tiffany Wells is hereby notified of a civil action filed against her. David read aloud, his face growing darker with each word. It was a class action lawsuit. My mother was suing me for $300,000, what she claimed it had cost to raise me for 18 years. Her lawyer had itemized everything: food, clothing, school supplies, medical care, even the cost of the bedroom I'd slept in. They'd calculated it all, down to the last dollar. We demand compensation for the defendant's upbringing and maintenance from birth to age 18, the document stated coldly. Both my sisters had joined the lawsuit, backing up Mom's claims with their own statements. They testified about how much Mom had sacrificed, how she'd gone without to provide for us. The same sacrifices they'd now forgotten I'd helped ease by sending money home all these years. The stress began taking its toll. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. Then one morning, I woke up to severe cramping. The pain was unlike anything I'd felt before. "Something's wrong," I gasped to David. "The baby." The next few hours were a blur of emergency rooms and worried doctors. The diagnosis was clear: the stress had put my pregnancy at high risk. I was admitted immediately. "If you don't reduce your stress levels significantly, you could lose the baby," the doctor told me gravely. I spent the next 2 weeks in the hospital, confined to bed rest. The white walls of my hospital room became my sanctuary from the chaos my family had created. David brought my phone one day, and I made him take it back. Just seeing the notifications made my blood pressure spike. The legal battle dragged on for months. David and I watched our savings drain away, $5,000 gone to legal fees, and still the case continued. I sat through depositions, listening to my mother detail every expense she'd ever incurred on my behalf. My sisters testified about her sacrifices, painting me as an ungrateful daughter who'd struck it rich and abandoned her family. They conveniently forgot about all the money I'd sent home over the years, all the bills I'd helped pay. Finally, after what felt like endless hearings, the judge made his decision. "The court finds in favor of the defendant," he announced. "Parents have no legal right to demand compensation for fulfilling their parental duties. Furthermore, lottery winnings are the sole property of the ticket holder." Case dismissed. But winning the court battle didn't end the war. My sisters took to social media, determined to destroy my reputation if they couldn't get my money. "Watch out for family members who pretend to care about you but only care about themselves," Marcy posted, making sure to tag mutual friends. Lana was even more direct: "Some people forget where they came from once they get money. They turn their backs on the family that raised them. Karma will come for the selfish ones." Their posts got shared in our extended family circles. Cousins I hadn't talked to in years were suddenly commenting, taking sides. Old friends from high school reached out, asking what was going on. The story spread through our small community like wildfire. I was sitting in our living room, scrolling through yet another hateful post, when David walked in. He took one look at my face and took the phone from my hands. "Enough," he said firmly. "This has to stop. We need to move, far away. Another state. Somewhere they can't reach us." He sat down beside me. "I've already checked with my company. I can transfer to any branch I want. And you work remotely anyway. But the house, the apartment," I protested weakly. "We'll sell them. Both of them. We'll start fresh somewhere else." He took my hands in his. "Think about it, no more drama, no more stress. Just us and the baby." He was right. As soon as I was cleared by my doctor to travel, we put both properties on the market. The house sold quickly. Turns out a lot of people dream of country living. The apartment took a little longer, but eventually, we found a buyer. We packed our lives into boxes, carefully sorting what to keep and what to leave behind. Each item we packed felt like another step toward freedom. We didn't tell anyone our destination. Not my sisters, not my mother, not even our friends at first. We hired movers who wouldn't know our final address until the day of delivery. It felt extreme, but after everything that had happened, we couldn't risk my family following us. We'd been in our new home for about a month when my aunt called. Seeing her name on my phone screen didn't trigger the usual anxiety I'd grown accustomed to. Aunt Sarah had always been different from the rest of the family. "Hey sweetie," she said warmly. "How are you settling in?" We chatted for a few minutes about the new house and the baby before her tone turned serious. "I should tell you something," she said. "Marcy came by yesterday. She was asking about you, wanted to know where you'd moved to." My heart skipped a beat. "What did you tell her?" "Nothing. I told her I didn't know, which is true. You haven't even told me your exact address." She paused. "But she asked me to let her know if I find out." She seemed determined. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. "Thank you, Aunt Sarah, for not telling her anything." "Oh, honey, I wouldn't. I've watched this whole mess unfold." "What they did to you," she sighed. "It's not right." After hanging up, I walked into what would be the baby's room. David and I had been working on it every weekend, painting the walls a soft yellow, assembling furniture, laying down the plush carpet I'd fallen in love with. The rocking chair by the window was my favorite spot now. Sitting there, looking at the half-finished nursery, I thought about Marcy and her student loans. For so long, I'd carried that guilt around, the feeling that I should have helped her, should have shared my good fortune. But now? That guilt was gone. "You made your own choices, Marcy," I whispered to the empty room. "You're the one who started all this. You're the one who turned Mom against me. You chose money over our relationship." David found me there later, sketching out ideas for the shelving we wanted to install. "Look what I found," he said, holding up a stuffed elephant. "Perfect for the safari theme we talked about." I smiled, making room for him to perch on the arm of the rocking chair. We'd been so happy here, in our new life. No more angry phone calls, no more threatening messages, no more stress. Just us, planning for our baby, making our house into a home. I looked around the room, at the gentle glow of the evening sun through the curtains we'd picked together, at the tiny clothes already hanging in the closet, at the half-assembled crib waiting for its occupant. "This is what matters now," I said softly. "This room, this house, our family, the one we're building. Not the one I left behind." The baby kicked, as if in agreement, and I laughed. My world had gotten smaller in some ways, no more extended family gatherings, no more complicated relationships to navigate. But it had also grown infinitely larger, filled with the possibility of what lay ahead.